Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started here soon. Alright. So, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. This is episode 53 of the This Week in Tech, kind of the weekly show that I do on this channel. I actually went back and counted how many episodes. So now I know how many of these I've actually done. So now I have a numbered series. So every time I do these weekly shows, now I'll start off with the episode number. So I can't believe we've done 53. Well, this is the 53rd. So we've done 52. 52, there's 52 weeks in a year, which means that now we're kind of like the second year in to this Week in Tech series. So good afternoon, everybody. This is going to be the 53rd episode. Like I said last week, there's not a whole lot of new things in tech worth talking about. So it's going to kind of be a rehash of the latest rumors. Now, we did have a very interesting thing that happened. Literally, this came out today. These articles pertaining to Granite Ridge. So that's kind of why I started the stream with a Q&A asking if the viewers are planning on upgrading their PC this year, because this is one of those upgrade years, in the sense that if you want to be on the latest and greatest when it's most relevant, this is the year to be looking to upgrade, because this is the year that we're getting generational changes in computer hardware in terms of the CPU platform. And then later on this year, we are also going to see GPU. The GPU series, the generation will change, but only at the upper end. So if you're somebody who buys like the flagship parts for the GPUs and the CPUs, this is a relevant year, because this is kind of that upgrade. This is the inflection point in terms of the upgrade cycle. So some people buy on the off year, some people strictly buy last gen hardware because it's more mature. For example, those that stuck on AM4 with the 5800X3D, or they maybe went with DDR4 motherboards on Intel when Alder Lake came out a few years ago. Like, those would be examples of people who do that. But yeah. Yeah, it's going to be... So, it also depends on the kind of like what you consider sane and normal price points, because especially graphics cards, and to a lesser extent motherboards, have gotten out of control in terms of the pricing in recent years. So 5090 likely out of the price range. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the 5090 is going to be like over $2,000 MSRP. Like, I think minimum for that card would be like $1,800 minimum. But I think, like, if Nvidia does their Founders Edition, the Founders Edition will probably be $2,000, maybe even more. Because keep in mind, the Titan RTX was $2,500. So there's nothing saying that Nvidia can't charge $2,500 again for a flagship GPU. They can certainly get away with doing that. I think even if they do that, there'll be a ton of people that still buy it. So, Met saying 25 to 3,000. I don't know about 3,000. I think 3,000 is a little bit on the high side, because if you look at where the 4090 sits today at 1,600 MSRP, $3,000 is almost double. I don't think they're gonna do double from one generation to the next. So that's too much. But anywhere, I'm gonna say from 1,800 to 2,500 is the range. Somewhere in there. Any number, any price point within 1,800 to 2,500, I would not be surprised at all. If it's less than 1,800 or more than 2,500, I would be surprised. Then they'll surprise me if they do that. Nicholas is saying 18 to 2000. Yeah, see, that's kind of what I think it's going to be. I think it's going to get an incremental price increase. I don't think that they'll do 1600 again. That doesn't make any sense because 3090 was 1500, 4090 was 1600. So what's stopping them from doing 1800? Especially the reason why I think it's going to be somewhere between 1800 and 2500 is because what Nvidia can do is they can look at what are the AIB partners selling their cards for. And when you see Asus selling a Strix for $2,000 or more, and there's enough people buying it, that's going to signal to Nvidia that they can charge $2,000 or more. I mean, as long as it's selling at high enough volume, and they'll be able to tell because they won't look at what people are buying, like how often people are buying Strix. They're going to look at how many people are buying, or how many chips Asus is buying from them. Remember, because Nvidia doesn't sell, the only cards that Nvidia sells to the direct to consumer are the Founders Edition cards. All the other cards, like the Asus Strix, the MSI Supreme, all those cards, Nvidia is selling the chips to those AIB partners, and those guys are then selling to the consumers with their custom designs, their coolers or their PCBs, etc. So, as long as those vendors are buying a lot of chips from Nvidia, there's nothing stopping Nvidia from raising the price to the partner, and then the partner will foot that bill over to the consumer, and that's why we will see prices in excess of $2,000 or more. 4090 is basically the budget AI GPU. I've been seeing lots of people buying 6 to 8 of them for AI servers. Yeah, even though it wasn't really designed to do that, people are still doing it. It's mainly because of the VRAM. Certain LLMs, especially in the early days of LLM development, required more than 24 gigabytes. But now they've gotten it to where you can actually run them with... I think it's like you have to have at least 13 or something. I forgot because, like, I think one of the earlier... Not the current version of ChatGPT, but the first one, or the earlier one. The one from late 2022... That one, I think, required like 33 gigs of VRAM or something. 33, 34 gigs of VRAM. That's why you really needed a 48 gigabyte card. So that's the reason why the enterprise cards are so much more expensive than the consumer. Well, anyway, that's not what I wanted to talk about. I mean, this is all interesting, but I wasn't really expecting to talk about 4090 because we're talking about next generation hardware. So the discussion topics this stream are all going to be focused on Zen 5, Battlemage, the 50 series, maybe Arrow Lake, but we don't really have much to go off of on that one. So, the first article here I want to talk about, this came out probably a few hours ago. So, the AMD Granite Ridge Ryzen desktop CPUs. Anyway, maybe I should step back for a second. If anybody is thinking of upgrading this year, you're going to want to wait until the second half of the year because we're not that far away. At this point, we're like 4-5 months. Actually, no, not even that. Like we're almost April right now, so we're about to go into Q2. Q2 is like the next 3 months where nothing really happens. Except toward the end, we're going to see a lot of hardware announcements. So I expect we're going to hear more and more about Granite Ridge in the next couple of months. And it's probably going to launch in Q3. I can't see this part launching in Q4. I don't really think it's going to launch in Q2. If it was going to launch in Q2, I would have expected to hear more leaks pertaining to the chipset for the motherboards. But we haven't gotten a lot of information recently on that. We will talk about the chipset in a little bit because there is some information to go off of. But not a lot of people are talking about motherboards. So we're going to probably spend some of this time on this stream talking about motherboards because if you're someone who's looking to upgrade from your current PC, whether you built it yourself previously or it's a pre-built or whatever the case may be, we're going to talk about the certain kind of criteria that you should consider if you're going to buy a new motherboard, what to look for, and what to be aware of. if you're doing this for the first time, if you're a first-time builder, or if you're a veteran who's built multiple PCs, maybe some of this stuff will be new to you. So let's talk about the leaks first. So Zen 5 has been spotted in a shipping manifest over in Asia. So right here, so Momomo underscore US on Twitter. Yes, I'm going to keep saying Twitter. I know it's not called Twitter anymore, but I think the rename sounds so dumb. So anyway, yeah. So it was spotted in a shipping manifest, 64-bit microprocessors, integrated circuits. It literally says Granite Ridge. Granite Ridge. That's a dead giveaway. 6-core, 105-watt TDP. So this is kind of like the Ryzen 5 CPU, Ryzen 5 version of whatever the Granite Ridge SKU ends up being. So it's probably something like a 7600X successor is what this is. And there'll be dual CCD versions of this. Now, they're saying 8,000 down here at the bottom. I don't think it's going to actually be 8,000. And I've said this in a previous stream. I really think that Zen 5, for the consumer desktop, Zen 5 is going to use the Ryzen 9000 series. I think that's the number that they're going to go with. I would not be surprised at all if they go Ryzen 9000. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at AMD's desktop CPUs, with the one exception being Zen Plus, which was a Ryzen 2000 SKU, all of the desktop processor families have always been odd-numbered SKUs. So, for example, Zen 1 was Ryzen 1000 series. Zen 2 was Ryzen 3000. Zen 3 was Ryzen 5000. And the current generation Zen 4 is Ryzen 7000. So the ones that go in between, the even-numbered SKUs, are usually the even-numbered. 8000 was listed on AMD's own slides. So are you telling me that you've seen slides of the actual Granite Ridge? All the even-numbered SKUs have always been the plus version of the current generation. So for example, Ryzen 2000 is Zen Plus. Ryzen 4000 is Zen 2 Plus. Ryzen 6000 is Zen 3 Plus. And currently, Ryzen 8000 is Zen 4 Plus. So we already know this because the 8700G is already in existence. And that's Zen 4 Plus. You're not talking about the G? Well, what are you talking about? If you have slides for Ryzen Zen 5, I don't know how you managed to get those. Because I don't think anybody's seen those unless you're an employee at AMD. There's no way to actually see that. That's all internal information at this point. So anything that you have seen that says Ryzen 8000 is referring to Zen 4 Plus, and that is the G series. So are there slides that I should know about for Zen 5? Is there slides? Do you have a source? Anyway, so the PC builders building on AM5 are now dropping. Okay, so yeah, we already knew this. We knew that it's going to be on AM5 socket. 8700F is a Ryzen Zen 4 monolithic part. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's Zen 4. Like I said, 8000 series is Zen 4 Plus, not Zen 5. The AMD is very predictable at this point. Like, it's very, very easy to figure out what generation based off of the actual number of the CPU, like the model number. So, this is, what are you most excited to see in the next gen? Do we have to? We can only choose one. What I want to see is, it would be cool if they had new features, but I highly doubt it because everything now is kind of the same. So I would probably say Increased single core performance. Oh, we can choose more than one. I also want to see this stuff. I/O. Better memory scaling support. Okay, you could choose 3. Let's see. Yeah, I guess that's it. So, okay, so IPC. Interesting. Performance per watt or more cache. Did they say more cache? I didn't see that one. Oh, right there, yeah. Well, the thing is, we already know. See, the thing with this is, yeah, they could do more cache for the non 3D, but we already know they do X3D as like a separate SKU. Although I don't expect to see the X3D for Zen 5 until the early next year. I don't think we're gonna see X3D this year. The only way we could see X3D on Zen 5 this year was if for some reason Zen 5, like the normal Zen 5, launches earlier than expected. So for example, if it launches in late July, we might see X3D in December, maybe. Or, maybe holiday season, probably, maybe. But I think it's going to probably launch, if I had to guess, it would launch in okay, I see the slide. Yeah, how old is that slide though? Where'd you get the slide? Because that slide looks old. 2024 Ryzen. 2024 8000 series is already out. But I don't know if that's... Yeah, that's... Okay, that's an interesting slide. I don't think that's correct, though. I think it's still going to be called 9000 series. I would expect the L2 cache increase since each CCD only has 8 megs on Zen 4. Yeah, probably. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see how performance, because, now we have a game that literally just came out that is a perfect benchmark for this upcoming Zen 5 CPU, and that game is Dragon's Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma 2 is the most CPU-bound modern game that I have ever played. Like that game and Star Wars Jedi Survivor are the two most CPU-bound games I have ever tested and ever played. Like, in recent memory. Last of Us Part 1, sort of, but not exactly. I feel like Jedi Survivor, and the problem with Last of Us is also very GPU heavy, whereas Jedi and Dragon's Dogma are not nearly as GPU heavy. So that's why those two are much better indicators of CPU bottleneck performance, because if you have any modern GPU for RE Engine, RE Engine's not going to be GPU limited. I mean, Dragon's Dogma is literally no different from Resident Evil 4 or any of the Resident Evil games on RE Engine. So any modern GPU can handle even ray tracing on RE Engine just fine. But the CPU, man, oh wow. So Dragon's Dogma, I can't wait to test Zen 5 with Dragon's Dogma, because that game, whoa, boy, is that game hard to run for anyone with a CPU that's 4 years old or more. The only thing that was hard to run on The Last of Us was one of the shader compiling at the first. Yeah, but see, that doesn't really... I don't know. Because I'm playing on like 16 core CPUs with 32 threads or more in the case of Threadripper. So I never really noticed like shader compiling to me is like... Yeah, but I understand where you're coming from. Like, most people don't have like super high thread count CPUs. But in general, though, like Dragon's Dogma is still an exceptionally good CPU benchmark for a game. I really wish it had a built-in benchmark. I really wish Capcom would make built-in benchmarks for a lot of their RE Engine games, because RE Engine is such a fascinating engine the more you think about it, because that engine's been around for a long time with moderate updates or mild updates over the years. But it is pretty good. It's a pretty good engine. Although it's actually pretty impressive. We're not going to get off on that tangent, but like, because I've talked about Dragon's Dogma a lot recently. But yeah, I can't wait to try to test this new CPU when it comes out. I expect that I don't think. Well, we'll see. Because Capcom, the problem is Capcom has said that they're going to try to improve the performance. So by the time the CPU shows up, maybe there won't be a way to test with the current build of Dragon's Dogma, because they might, by the time the CPU comes out, maybe Capcom will have optimized the game somewhat, so it won't be as bad anymore. But we'll see. I still think that that's an excellent game to test with this new CPU. So I definitely plan on upgrading to Zen 5 with the current CPU that I'm using, which is the 7950X3D. So I plan to replace this CPU with the Zen 5 CPU. And then whenever the 3D V-Cache, I will replace 3D V-Cache, but I will continue to use the 7950X3D with an RTX 4090 for the foreseeable future as the main kind of, that's going to be weird because it depends on how much faster Zen 5 is. I expect Zen 5 will beat the X3D Zen 4 in gaming. Now, by how much it will win, I don't know. I have no idea. But I can't see it not being faster than the X3D. If it's not faster than X3D, then it's really not going to be that much of a difference over the current generation in terms of compute. So I feel like it needs to be at least winning against X3D in gaming on average for it to for people to justify going to it. Unless they're on like AM4, because at this point, if you're on like a 5800X3D that you bought 2 years ago, or maybe like a year and a half ago, then if you want to go to a new generation platform, I think this would be a good one to go to. No, I think it should be faster than X3D. Think about it like this. There are some games where the Intel 14th gen beats the X3D. Now, whenever the Intel wins over the X3D, it wins by a small margin. Whenever the X3D wins over the 14th gen, it wins by a large margin. Now, in those games where X3D is like way ahead, I don't know how Zen 5 will do in that scenario. But in the games where Intel is able to beat an X3D Zen 4, Zen 5 better win over X3D, because then that'll be embarrassing if it can't win over X3D. Yet 14th gen can actually win, and 14th gen is nothing more than like Raptor Lake Plus, which is technically Alder Lake Plus Plus. So at this point, which is actually Rocket Lake Plus 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 with a node shrink. So, Zen 5 should definitely win against X3D. If 14th gen can beat X3D in some games, Zen 5 better beat X3D. Otherwise, it's going to be a joke if it's not able to win. So that's what I expect to see happen. And think about it like this, guys. Think of it like 5800X3D. 5800X3D. To put things into perspective, think of 5800X3D as if that was the 7800X3D. So, for example, the 7700X beats the 5800X3D in a lot of games. But in some games, the 5800X3D actually wins against the 7700X. It's rare, but it happens. And those are the games that usually benefit heavily from the extra cache. So those are the weird scenarios where I could possibly see Zen 5 losing to Zen 4 X3D, but not by a lot. Usually it's going to be more like what I just said, where the 7700X is faster than the 5800X3D. I expect Zen 5 to beat the 7800X3D in the same exact scenario. So think of it like that. Because 5800X3D is not the fastest gaming CPU. Like, it loses to Zen 4 in a lot of cases. It loses to Intel in a lot of cases. The only CPUs where 5800X3D wins is like it beats Alder Lake in a lot of things, but not everything. And it beats Zen 4 in some things, but most of the time it loses to Zen 4 in a lot of games. So I've been thinking about getting a 5800X 3D, even though I don't actually need one. But I feel like the longer I wait for Zen 5, the less likely it'll be that I'll ever get a 5800X 3D. Because I was thinking, like, I have a 5800X AM4 system. I don't really use it that much anymore, but it would be an interesting CPU. Like a 5800X would be an interesting CPU to test, just to see how. Because the thing with me is I tend to test games that not a lot of the larger YouTube channels test. Like, I don't test Counter-Strike. I don't test like a lot of those Battlefield, Call of Duty games because I don't play any of those games. I would test games that the average reviewer... Well, okay, some of the games that I would test would overlap. Like, for example, Horizon Forbidden West. I would test that because that's new. But I test Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I test Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. I test, well, in this case now, Dragon's Dogma. But I have my own set of games that I test. And I also plan to add, I test Avatar. That's new. But I also plan to test the new upcoming Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail benchmark. I will be updating my test setup to include that game / benchmark when it comes out. Probably in, I think the benchmark tool will be available for download either late April or sometime in May is when I expect that to show up. So I do plan to test a lot of different GPUs and CPUs with that specific benchmark because that is a game that I plan to play a lot around the June and July timeframe. So expect to see a lot of Final Fantasy 14 coverage because there's not a lot of hardware to talk about. I mean, I've planned to make videos on motherboards, especially as we get closer to Zen 5. So there's going to be a lot of motherboard content, a lot of DDR5 content on this channel, because I feel like a lot of other YouTubers, or I guess tech tubers, they focus on GPUs and maybe CPUs, but no one really talks about RAM. No one really talks about motherboards. So I'm going to focus on motherboards and RAM. The things that no one talks about, I'm going to try to be kind of the specialist, if you will, in that specific piece of hardware, because I feel like that's often overlooked. And what ends up happening is someone will build a computer, they don't think about the motherboard, and then they end up getting a motherboard. Then later on, they have buyer's remorse, or then they want to try to sell that motherboard off and get a different one because that motherboard is lacking something that they wanted to use, or they wanted to do something, but that motherboard doesn't have it, or whatever the case may be. So, and the RAM is a similar scenario, but the RAM doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, only person you see doing motherboards is Billzoid. Billzoid is only focused on like overclocking. And the thing is, I feel like there's so much more you can talk about than just overclocking. So, I don't plan to talk about overclocking too much. I mean, I occasionally will do a video about how to overclock or how to do something in terms of optimizing a platform. But I think there's more discussion points that nobody is talking about. Like M.2, value for money, USB 4, PCI Gen 5, all those sort of things that people think they don't need, but then later on, like if they save money on something that doesn't have something, and then later on, it's always one of those feels bad when you are the one that has something that doesn't have something, even though your CPU supports that thing. Like, best example I can give you is if someone bought like a Z590 motherboard, but then they pair it up with like a 10th gen Intel CPU, they can't use any of the PCI Gen 4 that the Z590 includes because their CPU doesn't do Gen 4. They'd have to be on 11th gen if they wanted to unlock the full potential of the platform. So stuff like that. There's things like that that nobody really talks about. You know, like the fact that every single Z790 motherboard like steals half of the GPU lanes if you want your primary M.2 slot to work. You know, things like that. Nobody actually talks about that. Like those are the sort of things that I'm going to cover. I'm wondering what NIC the motherboards for next gen will end up using. Seems like 2.5 has been around for years. Well, upgrade. Yeah, but that's because 2.5 is kind of the maximum that the average household, let's say, internet infrastructure allows or does. So that's the reason why I think all of the vast majority of next-gen motherboards are all going to be 2.5. Now, obviously, there's going to be 10 gig options. Those are going to be the really expensive motherboards, like it always is. But I think 2.5, the reason why 2.5 is the standard is because the average Ethernet cabling in somebody's house or apartment that was built in the last 30 years or newer. I don't know about like brand new. Maybe brand new is a little bit different. But if your house or apartment was built in like the 80s, 90s, the 2000s, the O's, even the teens decade, it depends, the teens decade, like the last 10 years, the wall, assuming you have Ethernet in your wall, it's probably only capable of doing 2.5 gigabit. That's why they do 2.5 gigabit. It's not really about fiber. That has nothing to do with it. It's the actual cabling in the physical home. The physical house or apartment usually only has Cat5e cabling, and that's the reason why there's no point in 10 gig. Because if you're going to do 10 gig, you're going to have to run like all new cabling in the walls. I'm speaking from personal experience. I can't do 10 gig because the walls in my house are full of Cat5e. So, I mean, I've tested my throughput. The most I can do is 2.5. Oh, actually, no, I take that back. The most I can do is 5 gig. I can do 5 gig, but only like a certain distance. Like if I test halfway between the switch to the computer, I can do 5 gig. If I test the full distance all the way across the house, I can only do 2.5 gig reliably. And that is the reason why you see these motherboards doing 2.5 gig. It has nothing to do with the internet service provider and the fiber that they provide to the house. The problem is the physical house cabling in the walls cannot handle 10 gig. I've tested it. I have a YouTube video talking about 10 gigabit network cards, and it was during the time of me making that video that I learned, I can't actually do 10 gig at all, because unless the PCs are literally directly connected to each other in the same exact room. So, did you see the last comment about the RAM? You tuned the Hynix from at 1.4 at Gear 1. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is I'm curious to know like what sort of improvements the Zen 5 CPU brings when it comes to RAM. Because I think the biggest complaint that I have observed in the public talking about Zen 4 upgrades has to do with memory training. Like, literally, the memory training thing is the number one biggest complaint. The thing is with Intel, though, what they don't tell you is Intel also has to train the DDR5. But for some reason, Intel, I don't know, like AMD, DDR5 training on AMD, like, it works, and then, like, sometimes, like, I've noticed this myself, like, after probably, like, once a month or after, like, 4 or 5 weeks, if I reboot the computer, it takes the full time to train. Strangely enough, it just does. But most of the time, like I said, it's like this happens like once every 1.5 months. It'll have to retrain. Like the full memory training has to take place. I don't know. I haven't really used my Intel PC enough sequentially or consecutively to see if Intel does it as well. Intel will do it if you clear a CMOS though, but so does the AMD one. So I don't know. I've seen AMD have to take a longer time to retrain. Intel takes time to train too, though. But the thing is, I don't know. Like I feel like AMD, if AMD's MCR is working properly, it's actually faster than Intel. But if it's not, then it's slower than Intel. Intel is one of those where it's like it will train, cache all the values, and then its MCR implementation just always seems to work for some reason. Whereas AMD's always seems to work, except every now and then it will do the full train procedure for some weird reason. I don't know why. Yeah, about once a month it seems to take about a minute. Yes, and that's because it's like doing the full memory training procedure. And I don't know why it does that. Because I haven't seen that happen on the Intel CPU that I've been using. And the thing is, like with Intel, I can tell you guys, like Intel right now, so my Intel CPU is only running the RAM at 4800 megahertz because I'm running 128 gigs of memory with the Intel 13900K. That means I'm running 4 sticks of memory with Intel, and I can't run my RAM on Intel, 4 sticks, I should say, 4 sticks dual rank, that's 128 gigs total. So we're doing 4x32, and with Intel, I can probably get it to 5000, but I keep it on 4800 because I know it won't corrupt my operating system. So yeah, and it's slow, but it works. So because it's all about the capacity. Now with AMD, I'm running the 2 sticks of 48. So I'm running 96 gigs total on 2 sticks at 6400 megatransfers. So I got 96 on 6400 on AMD versus 128 across 4 sticks at 4800 on Intel. But yeah, it's weird. I guess I should probably try to see if I can overclock. Although I tried overclocking my Intel RAM to 5600 and it corrupted my operating system. I had to reinstall Windows. So I don't know if I don't really want to deal with that headache again. So RAM instability is something that you do not want to mess with. You do not want your RAM to be unstable because you could end up you could brick your OS and you have to reinstall Windows. And that's what happened to me with a 13900K. I mean, I thought I was able to do 128 gigs at 5600 megatransfers. Boy, was I wrong. No, I ruined my operating system and had to reinstall. So it was terrible. And it took me like 2 or 3 days to figure that my operating system was corrupting itself due to all the memory errors in the background. So with AMD, I was able to run 192 gigs at 6,000 megatransfers, but it is not easy to do. I have a video showing how to do this. You can do this on AMD. You cannot do this on Intel, as far as I know, because unfortunately, there's nowhere at least on the Gigabyte BIOS that I was using, there's nowhere to train the bus, the impedance values. You can't change impedance values on the Intel motherboard. So that means you cannot get high speed 4 sticks of dual rank, which means 128 minimum or 192 gigs of RAM or more on Intel. But you can on AMD, but it is not easy. You have to play around with impedance values, which means you're adjusting the resistors on your physical motherboard and your physical DRAM themselves. So it's not exactly easy to do. You have to have a very good kit of memory that is heat resistant because you may have to like push voltages and it could run really hot. So it's not easy to do on AMD, but you can do it on AMD. And on Intel, you literally just can't do it. It's just impossible with the current generation. Maybe Arrow Lake will improve memory, but as far as I'm concerned, AMD actually seems to do better. Like AMD has more headroom in terms of capacity of memory. Intel can run high speed, but only in like really small amounts, like 32 gigs. It's like 32 gigs. I don't care about 32 gigs. 32 gigs is like nothing to me. That's like one stick of memory. You know what I mean? So glad AMD aren't going to raise the TDPs to push performance. Yeah, I don't want TDPs to go up. I don't want TDPs to go up because I'm never going to change from my air cooler. I'm going to keep using my air cooler. And that's why the thing about this CPU that really made me kind of frown on Intel was the fact that I cannot just put this in my motherboard, stick a Noctua cooler on top of it, and expect it to work without having to do any tweaks. Like, that to me was not a good user experience. Like, no one should be forced to go into the BIOS, change things manually so that they can use an air cooler with their CPU. Like, that is ridiculous. So the 14900KS requires direct die cooling with a custom. Yeah, see, and when things are that dumb, when things become that extreme, to me that is less accessible and is actually not impressive. It's actually embarrassing if a product requires all that kind of nonsense. And this is coming from an enthusiast. I could do all those things, but do I care to do all those things? No, not really. I mean, is it interesting to see people do those things? Yes. Do I care to tear apart my hardware and put like, do I care to remove my socket retention bracket and put some random thermal grizzly contact frame or whatever? Do I really want to do all that stuff and potentially run into issues with warranty claims with the motherboard manufacturer if I want to do an RMA and they're like, well, why did you remove the thing? No, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. You know, like, no, that's not how it should be. Even if I could do that, or even, I mean, I can do all that stuff, I'm not going to bother with that because to me, that's ridiculous. It's kind of sad that products like contact frames from Thermal Grizzly and D-lid kits exist because the CPU manufacturers don't know how to design their products properly. That's the way I look at it. I'm not going to go and buy a contact frame because somebody made their CPU in such a way where it runs like garbage without one. You know, like, I'm not going to do that. That's dumb. No. What I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to adjust things in the BIOS so that I can make it work the way it's supposed to work. So, in the case of the 1300K, the only reason why I'm able to use it with a Noctua cooler is because I have power limited it using Intel's official power limit specifications. So I don't run mine in unlimited power. I run mine in 253 watt PL2 mode or whatever they call it. That's what I run it in. Not the 4096 watt unlimited power. No, that's the default, and that's the thing that I don't use. And I was listening to the PC Perspective podcast yesterday evening, and somewhere in there, one of the guys on there was talking about how his wife is still using a Intel 3000, like a Intel 3770K Ivy bridge, and it still works. And one of the other guys on the show said that it probably works because that CPU only used like 70 watts. And they were all kind of joking amongst themselves, saying like, I wonder if Intel's current generation CPUs will live that long, considering how hot and power hungry they are. You know, I wonder how the thermal transistor degradation will kick in after a certain point in time, just because of all the heat, hot and cold cycles and all that wattage just running through there. You know, so, oh man. You're going to likely buy a new air cooler, like a Thermalright Phantom. See, I'm not going to buy a new air cooler because my air coolers work fine. Like, why? Why should I have to do any of that? I'm not going to use an AIO. I'm not going to use any of that nonsense. I'm just going to use my air cooler. Because, see, the thing is, like Nicholas is saying, don't trust water. I don't trust water either. I know like four people that have experienced leaks. One of them was a Twitch streamer. His PC leaked and his computer died because he had a pump leak. He couldn't stream for the rest of the day. He was like out for the rest of the week because his AIO died, or it leaked. It leaked. Another one, the pump died and the CPU overheated and shut down. You know, like too many stupid stories like that. And then like there was another guy who had I think he had like Fry's Electronics or someone put his computer together, and they like drilled holes at the top of the case to put the AIO in the top mounted, but they didn't even use the screw holes for the fans. So they basically did what the Verge Build a PC video showed. Like they drilled the screws all the way through the radiator, and eventually it worked for a while, but it eventually caused a leak because over time they weakened the metal because the screw had gone across the metal in such a way where it had compromised the structure integrity. So eventually the pump started leaking. It's like, yeah, no. No thanks. Nope. Arctic 420 was leaking out of the box last time I will ever bother looking at AIO. I mean, I've done AIO in the past. I mean, if you guys watched me build Threadripper, I built Threadripper with an AIO. It was a deep cool something. It was a 360 radiator. I'm not using it anymore. I'm using a Noctua air cooler on my Threadripper now. I only used that thing for probably like a week and a half. I used the liquid cooler. Then once the Noctua, because I ordered the Noctua, because the only reason why I told this story before. The only reason why I went with an AIO for Threadripper day one was because Micro Center didn't have an air cooler in the store. That's the only reason. I was forced to use AIO because there was no option in Micro Center. So I had to order the Noctua off of Newegg or somewhere. And while I was waiting for that, I was using the AIO. Once I got the Noctua in, the first thing I did was, nope, we're going to air. And it's been on air ever since. And it's Threadripper, guys. I'm using Threadripper on air. What has Noctua been up to? They fully ditched the white version of their fans. Yeah, I don't know what's up with all their delays. You have a good point there. I don't know what is up with the Noctua delays. You've had 3 different AIOs for several years with no issues. Yeah, I'm not saying that everyone who has an AIO is going to run into a problem. I'm just saying that I have run into I know enough people, and I've seen other people that I don't know that have had problems with AIOs to the point where it's like, I'd rather just not deal with any of that. So it's like, I'd rather just stick with the peace of mind knowing that there's no way my hardware is going to get damaged potentially from water. Because there's no water. It's like, I don't have to worry about it. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't do AIOs. Like, AIOs are fine. It's just, like, what's your tolerance level for annoyances? Like if the pump dies, for example, or the fact that over the years, the amount of liquid in the radiator will actually decrease because over time, some of it will permeate through the tubes, through the actual enclosure, and you will lose some of the water. Some of it will get out. That's just how it works. The porosity of the tubing will make some of the water eventually get out of the pump or get out of the loop, and you'll end up with more air bubbles. So that's why installation of it does matter, as Gamers Nexus and others have shown. That mitigates that problem that happens over time. But it's like, why deal with all that? Like the fact that I'm using a Noctua NHD 14. Noctua NHD 14. Just to give you guys an idea. This is what is cooling my Intel 13900K. Not even a Noctua D15. I'm using a previous generation D14, which is inferior to the D15. This is what is cooling the power-hungry 13900K. Like, that is what is sitting on top of the 13900K. No D-lid, no direct die, no offset mount, no nothing. No nothing. Just regular Noctua thermal paste that came with the cooler, and that's it. And it's installed on there correctly, and that's all it is. That's all it takes. You know what it's also cooling? I also have one of these on a 5800X. This thing on a 5800X, because I actually have 3 of these. So the second one, so one of them is on Intel. The second one is on a 5800X. And let me tell you something. 5800X plus a D14, you will never hear the cooler. The computer is completely dead silent, even under full load, because the 5800X barely uses any power. The thing's like 90 watts. 90 watts, and we have this big, fat, giant cooler sitting on top of a 5800X. So, yeah. The third one of these, now I got to think about it. Where's my third one? I've got 3 of these. Oh. The third one is on this. The 7800X3D. My 7800X3D is being cooled by an ancient Noctua D14, which, look at this, guys. This review was in April 1st, 2010. 2010. I'm cooling my Intel 13th Gen i9, my 7800X3D, and my old 5800X with a cooler that was built in 2010. How many people out there are using an AIO from 2010? That's it. 2010 technology cooling a power-hungry 13900K or a energy-efficient 7800X3D or like an old Zen 3. So this is what I use. This is like true enthusiast stuff right here. 2010. That's all you need. The only other coolers that I've got, I'll show you guys what I've got. I've got NH D15 Chromax. This thing. This is cooling the 7950X. The CPU that I'm streaming on right now uses a Noctua NH-D15 Chromax Black to cool the 7950X in the Fractal Torrent. So this CPU is like the king. This CPU has the best airflow cooler. It has a Fractal Torrent. It has a Noctua D15, which is the best air cooler that I have. The 7950X lives like a first-class citizen in terms of it gets like all the best stuff. It has the best case for airflow. It has the best air cooler. It has all the best stuff. So it's like, yeah, 7950X, for some reason, it's like treated like royalty. Meanwhile, this thing gets to sit on last generation cooling, and so does the 7800X3D and the 5800X. You might ask, well, what about the 7950X3D? What about this thing? This thing is on a Deep Cool AK620. This is what cools my 7950X3D. 7950X3D is being cooled by a Deep Cool. This is the only non-Noctua air cooler that I'm using. The temps are like 60, anywhere from like, oh, okay, we're talking about load. Under full load, it's like 67. I mean, you guys have seen me live stream. with these CPUs, and you've seen the temperatures. The temperatures range from like anywhere from like the low 60s, and I'm talking about under load. I'm not talking about idle. Idling, these things, let me tell you what it's idling at right now. I'll tell you right now. Hold on, I gotta open up. Where is it? Hardware. We could do hardware info, or I could do hardware. Let's do hardware monitor. Okay, the temperature right now is. Hold on, where is it? SOC 43 degrees. Package temp 59, 58 and a half. So we're running about 59 degrees. Average, let me see the average. The average is right around 60 degrees while using the CPU for live streaming. And that's with the Noctua D15 because I'm streaming on the 7950X, not the X3D, which I'm not using the Deep Cool. Deep Cool's on the X3D. So yeah, all these people talking about, oh, you need an AIO, you need an AIO. No, you don't need an AIO. Actually, you don't need an AIO. You literally don't need an AIO. It's like, that's the biggest scam I've ever seen when it comes to like building PC. Like people who like advise others to build PCs, claiming they know what they're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. And yeah, no. Do you need an AIO? No, you don't. You can do anything with an air cooler just fine. All right, so like I said earlier, where is that ancient thing? Look, I'm using a cooler from 2010. 2010 to cool X3D Vcache CPUs, Intel power hungry like monster i9 CPUs, and everything in between. Oh, and you guys want to know what Threadripper is being cooled by? Threadripper Noctua, let's see. This is what's cooling my Threadripper CPU. That thing. The, what is the model number? The TR5 SP6 or something. No, the U14S. It's called NHU14S TR5 SP6. It's the larger one. That's the one on the Threadripper. So it's like, yeah, even Threadripper, I'm using air. And this one actually cools, for some reason, better than the other ones. Like, I think it's because Threadripper actually runs colder than the other, like the Ryzen and the Intel CPUs. Threadripper runs the coldest, and I think it's because Threadripper is so spread out. There's so much more surface area on the cold plate and the IHS that the heat just disperses out way more evenly on Threadripper than on. I was actually surprised. It's less heat dense. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I mean, yeah, even this thing you can get away with air. So like anyone saying, oh, you gotta, like if someone's asking, I'm gonna build a PC, what do I need to get? Anyone's trying to tell, oh, you gotta get an AIO. Yeah, that's a big scam. That's a lie. You don't need AIOs at all. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. Like I actually know how to build PCs. I mean, you guys can go watch. I've built them live. So like, and they work. First shot, everything works fine. I'm just telling you guys like it is. Like, you don't need to buy expensive AIOs to cool CPUs. Anyway, so when Zen 5 comes out, basically what I'm saying is when Zen 5 comes out, I'm just gonna stick an air cooler on there, and that's it. I'm just gonna stick. Probably the Chromax Black is gonna go on top of that because I plan on upgrading from this thing. The 7950X is going to be swapped out for whatever the Zen 5 flagship ends up being. That's going to replace this CPU. So, someone I know bought a 420 millimeter for a 5800 X3D coming from a D15. I kept telling him not worth it at all, and indeed not worth it. Oh man, that's just, see, I call that just throwing money in the trash. Like, it's like, I guess it looks nicer, but see, the thing that people don't, here's the other thing, guys. I want to tell you guys something about this. There's something that I like about air coolers. So, the air cooler, notice how the fans are, they're blowing air down here. So think about something. I want to show you guys something. Let's think about something here. ASRock Steel Legend. So, you guys might remember that I have a Inland TD510, a PCIe Gen 5 SSD. I also have the Crucial T700. This is the fastest. Well, actually, I think there's a newer Crucial now, which is even faster. This, up until like a month ago, this was the fastest SSD in the world. This is a PCIe Gen 5 SSD. I have one of these in this computer right now, but I want to tell you guys something. So one thing I want to point out is when you have a Gen 5 SSD, right up here underneath the CPU socket, so right down here in the middle of the motherboard, that's where the Gen 5 SSD sits. That thing runs hot. However, because I have this massive, gigantic air cooler just sitting on top of it, covering up most of the motherboard, like you can't even see the RAM, you can't see anything because the CPU heatsink is just a giant block. It provides airflow right here. You get auxiliary air cooling from your CPU cooler across the SSD. So, because the SSD is right here, and remember, the fan of the Noctua is like this. It's physically like this. So you got airflow going from the front, which is where the RAM is, toward the back, which is where all the I/O USB is. Because of that airflow, my SSD never has issues with temperatures. And that is another benefit of using an air cooler that you completely miss out on if you have an AIO. If you have an AIO, your VRM temperatures tend to run slightly hotter than if you have an air cooler. Also, your RAM also runs cooler when you have an air cooler, because you have airflow, you have auxiliary airflow across the RAM and the VRM and the SSD. This is something that you lose out on if you have an AIO liquid cooler. You're not getting auxiliary flow near your VRM, your M.2, or your RAM. So this is the other secret technique that I use to ensure that I have good temperatures. That's how I'm able to run my RAM at the higher speed without doing any sort of active cooling. Because technically, I sort of have active cooling. It's not direct active cooling. It's what I call auxiliary active cooling, because it is dedicated for the CPU, but the other components around the air cooler benefit from it. Arctic does have VRM cooler on the AIO. Okay, yeah, but see that all that does is that drives up the cost of that AIO, adding all that extra stuff. 4090, 4080 pass through should help as well, even though the air that actually raises the temperature because that's very hot air. That's very hot air. So that doesn't actually help. It does help when it's idle. Yes, when your GPU is not, well, okay, see the other, so here's the thing, guys. I dislike the fan off thing. You know, when GPUs are idling, the fans turn off? I really don't like that. Whoever thought that was a good idea was very dumb, because I'm just being honest. Like, starting and stopping the fans is actually worse for the fan motors in terms of lifespan versus running the fans at a low RPM while idling. Let me repeat that. Turning off the fan and turning on the fan, because it turns off when it's idling and then turns on when it's under use and then turns off again when the temperature falls below a certain threshold and then turns on again when the temperature climbs to a certain threshold. That's going to wear down the fan motor faster than if the fan was always spinning at like 500, 600 RPM or 800 RPMs or whatever low speed it would be spinning at. So I don't like when the fans turn off, when the GPU fans turn off, because it's dumb. Because it's actually better if the fans, especially on a Founders Edition or any cooler that has a pass-through fan or a flow-through design, like the R9 Fury cards from Sapphire, using that as an example, because those were the first ones that did that. You get auxiliary cooling for your RAM and your SSD, because they're, especially the SSD, because it's in such close proximity to the graphics card. So I don't like when the fans turn off. The fans turning off is pointless as far as I'm concerned. Anything that is under 1400 RPM, you're not going to hear it. You're not going to hear it over your case fans. So there shouldn't be anyone complaining about, oh, it's noisier. No, it's not noisier, because your actual case fans are always spinning in the first place. So it's like, why not let the GPU fans spin at whatever the low speed is? You know, so no. Like that's another thing that's dumb. So the GPU does not contribute to cooling these components. If anything, the GPU actually makes temperatures worse, because the backplate of the GPU radiates heat in close proximity to the M.2. So the M.2 that's above the GPU tends to run hotter than the ones that are down here. And the one that is behind the GPU, that's covered up by the GPU, that one runs the hottest of all. Because the GPU, usually under full load, the GPU is pushing hot air against the motherboard, and then as well as out into the case. So, yeah, that's just the reality of how that works. I think the next time you build, installing a bunch of low noise adapters, since I already have a bunch, sometimes I can hear it in my PC. Retitle this stream to things that are dumb. Things that are dumb, things that nobody actually think about when building a PC, like, like the fact that a giant air cooler provides air cooling for not only the CPU but also RAM, VRM, and M.2. No one ever talks about that. Like, nobody ever mentions that, but it's true. You can't argue, you can't deny that. So, you can't hear the GPU when the CPU is 100%. Yeah, I mean, yeah. And AIOs are not quiet either. AIOs are not quiet, guys. Like, here's the thing. If somebody wants a quiet PC, they're going to want an air cooler. They're going to want a really, really big air cooler. The biggest air cooler is the quietest PC. AIOs are not quieter than, you know why? Because the pump. The pump is spinning at like 3,000 RPM. There's no way that a 3450 RPM fan inside water is going to be quieter than this thing. So, yeah. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, if you're going to build a PC this year, whether it's Zen 5 or any of the older stuff or whatever, you don't need a liquid cooler. And you don't need to overthink it, because it's really not that complicated. Alright, so that's Zen 5. I do plan to get this CPU later this year. So expect a whole lot of content, kind of like not last year, back when the channel actually started, which would have been like 2022, around the Intel Arc GPU launch, which we're about to talk about Intel GPUs, but yeah. Expect to see a lot of videos on the channel about motherboards, RAM, and the CPU itself. Why are there two of these? Oh, I guess I tried to... Alright, anyway. Okay, next article. Wow, we spent like an hour talking about that. Okay, Battlemage, XE2, BMG10 and BMG21 GPUs confirm pre-qualification samples for gaming graphics cards. Here we go. It's coming. Finally, Battlemage is now on track. Intel's next gen... Okay, it's so funny because we were talking about an AMD CPU. Now we're talking about an Intel GPU. I plan to build this very computer later this year. It's going to be Zen 5 plus Intel Battlemage. So we're going to have AMD's latest CPU, Intel's latest GPU combined to take on AMD's previous CPU plus Nvidia's previous CPU or previous GPU. So it's going to be AMD plus Intel versus older AMD plus older Nvidia. We're going to see what ends up happening. Now, to make things fair, because you guys know me, I already have my expectation for Battlemage. The contest is going to be Zen 5 plus Battlemage versus the 7950X3D plus the RTX 3080 Ti. That's how I'm going to make it fair. I'm not going to do 4090 versus Battlemage because that's stupid. It's going to be Battlemage versus the 3080 Ti. Who will win? Nvidia's Ampere flagship of the gamer crowd, which is basically 3080 Ti. Because according to Gerbauer, 3080 Ti is where it kind of tops out. Like anything above that is kind of dumb money. It's like your borderline insanity levels of pricing. So that's why it tops out at 3080 Ti. So 3080 Ti versus Battlemage, and then 7950X3D versus Zen 5. Who will win? That's going to be the contest that's going to take place. That's the showdown that's going to happen later this year. And then maybe if, we'll see what RDNA 4 does. RDNA 4 is the one thing that I literally don't know anything about. It's like, that's the thing that I have no idea what's going to happen there. But if RDNA 4 comes out, I'm going to have to do like another video of like Zen 5 plus RDNA 4 versus 7950X3D plus maybe a 7900 XT or something. It's going to be like AMD plus AMD versus AMD last gen plus AMD last gen. So it's like AMD versus AMD. So we have AMD Intel versus AMD Nvidia, and then we'll have AMD versus AMD. So it's going to be a lot of AMD in the next coming months. But Intel Battlemage is going to be in there. Nvidia's old stuff is going to be in there. And then we'll see what happens with like 5090. I think 5090 is going to be stupid expensive. So I don't think we're going to be covering it on this channel, at least not at release. I think it's going to be very hard to get, and it's going to be extremely expensive. Any news on Intel doing limited edition version again? I hope they do it. I want the limited edition. I mean, you guys know me. I always get the reference cards. The reference cards are the ones that I always go after. I favor reference card over anything else. Unless it's Sapphire, but they're like the one exception. So I always go reference card. So I really, really want Intel to make a limited... I mean, this one right here looks pretty cool, actually. You know what this looks like? Wouldn't it be awesome if Battlemage launches alongside the World of Warcraft expansion? That picture looks like something from WoW. That looks like a World of Warcraft something. Like a Death Knight or something in the background, holding up a Battlemage Arc. Battlemage Arc launching with WoW expansion. Because remember, guys, World of Warcraft is supposed to launch an expansion this year. World of Warcraft 2024. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Check it out. The War Within. Man, Battlemage. The name it's like perfect marketing. It's perfect marketing. When the War Within launches, Battlemage should launch with it. That can drive up hype for the game. It can drive up hype for Intel's GPU. It will be like the perfect thing. Intel, if you are watching this stream right now, you need to partner with Blizzard Entertainment and make sure you launch your Battlemage GPU with the War Within, because that is actually how you hype up your product. I mean, no joke. Like that, I'm like legit serious right now. This is not a joke. This is not a joke. Battlemage should launch together with WoW. The name Battlemage literally sounds like something that you would find in World of Warcraft. Am I not wrong? Am I correct? Am I wrong? How am I not wrong? I mean, this is correct. Like, there's no way that's wrong. Anyway, Intel's next-gen Battlemage BMG G10 whatever is confirmed. So the shipping oh man, there's a lot of shipping manifestos happening. There was shipping manifesto Zen 5, Zen 5 mobile, Zen 5 desktop. Now we've got shipping manifesto Battlemage. All the stuff is happening, guys. It's all coming this year. So if you want to upgrade your PC this year, you're going to be on the fence waiting for a while. I know how it is. You're just going to have to sit back and play Dragon's Dogma or distract yourself until the second half of this year, because I mean it's all coming out in the second half. This year we're gonna see some insane CPU launches, new motherboards, new GPUs from all three vendors, I might add. It's gonna be crazy the second half. Anybody who likes hardware, this is the year for you. This is the year for you. That's all I'm going to say. Because you have Intel potentially making a really good graphics card. You have Zen 5, which is probably going to come out and fix all the weird issues with memory training and all the other stuff. Because that's exactly what happened when Zen 2 came out. It fixed all the memory things with DDR4. They just magically went away. So I expect Zen 5 to do the exact same thing. More mature platform, etc., whatever. So you can keep the old motherboard. You don't have to buy a new motherboard. Although I think the new motherboards are going to offer some new things that you can't really get on the old motherboards unless you had a really, really expensive X670E motherboard. So, yeah, I can't wait for this. This thing is going to be interesting. And you know what's funny? If this thing launches with WoW, I'm going to have to resub to WoW. I haven't played WoW. Like, I haven't played retail WoW since, I don't even know when. But, like, I played WoW Classic in 2019 when it came out. Like, when they relaunched WoW Classic. I played it for, like, a month. And I got level 60. I joined a guild. I did like 2 runs of Molten Core, didn't really get any drops, and then I was like, okay, I've relived the nostalgia. It's done. My wish has been fulfilled. I have relived the glory days of World of Warcraft. But man, if this thing comes out with WoW's expansion, I probably might resub to WoW, play it with Battlemage, see how it runs, all that good stuff. So I can't wait for this. I'm so hyped for Battlemage and Zen 5. I'm telling you, like the two things that I am hyped for out of all the hardware. Okay, technically there's 3 things because I also want a PS5 Pro. But Zen 5, Battlemage, and the PS5 Pro. Those are the things that I absolutely want to get this year. I don't know enough about RDNA 4 to know how that's going to turn out. 5090 is going to be stupid expensive, so I'm probably not even going to bother. And that's pretty much it. I guess Intel will have some new CPUs at the very end of the year, which will be Arrow Lake. That could be interesting too, but we don't really have much info to go off of other than the Meteor Lake launch was pretty bad last year. So I don't know what is going to happen there. But Intel is launching a new CPU. And there may be more interesting news as we get into the second half with that. But yeah, the thing with Zen 5, though, is like I literally just have to buy the CPU and just drop it in. Because it's like BIOS update, drop it in, good to go. If I get Intel Arrow Lake will require a new motherboard. And for anyone who skipped DDR5, if they went to like Alder Lake or Raptor Lake and they stuck with DDR4 motherboards, regardless of the motherboard change, you will have to buy DDR5 because Intel is no longer going to support DDR4 with their new motherboard. It'll be basically the same as Zen or the new Ryzen CPUs. You'll run Zen 5, new 5090, and X870E. See, that's the super high-end build. That's basically like the flagship build. Yeah, I just think 5090 is going to be like $2,000 or more. I wouldn't be surprised. the lowest MSRP value on that is probably gonna be like $1,800, $1,799. So you can expect all the AIBs, like the Supreme and the Strix and all those cards to be more, like even more. So, and if Nvidia does $1999 Founders Edition, then you know all the AIBs is gonna be like $2,100, $2,200, etc. The Strix will probably be like $2,400 or some stupid amount. Yeah, $2,500. So that's why I don't know, man. I mean, like, 5090, it's getting up there where it's like it's starting to rival the price of like cameras, like super high-end cameras. So, but yeah, this thing should launch with World of Warcraft. And I want to say something about RDNA 4. Let's take a step back, talk about RDNA 4. Is there even a leak on this? Hold on. RDNA 4? There hasn't been any new articles. There's a PS5 thing. Okay, where is it? This? Okay, right here. RDNA 4, assuming it's ready, should launch with Dawntrail. Just saying. Like, I think the GPU companies like AMD and Intel, I mean, Nvidia can do whatever they want. They're just kind of off in their own little world at this point. But like AMD and Intel, they need to launch their GPUs alongside these big name MMOs. Because like, okay, we got, did I get rid of the article? Okay, we don't need this anymore. World, well actually, no, we have it right here. Okay, see, okay, this is what I'm saying. Hear me out on this. They should team up. They should launch their GPUs when there is a hyped up game. Because these MMOs are not like Pal World, some early access thing. Or they're not like Helldivers 2, which is a very good game, but it's one of those games where do you really think people are going to be playing Helldivers 2 in like 4 months from now? I feel like the player base on Helldivers 2 is going to drop down. Like, it's one of those things where it's like really popular right now, but then it's going to like go down over the next several months. Whereas a game like WoW always has a steady stream of subscribers, current player base. Like it fluctuates between expansions. However, whenever there's a new expansion, a lot of people resub to the game and start playing it again to grind out the end game content of the previous expansion to prepare for the new one. So I feel like if it was me, Battlemage should try to align to the launch of World of Warcraft: The War Within. Likewise, AMD's RDNA 4 should align with Square Enix's Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail, because this is the other big MMO that is launching an expansion. The expansion is Dawntrail. This will be available July 2nd. July 2nd. So this is Q3. Now, see, July 2nd, Dawntrail launches. So we now know when Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail will be available, basically in the summer. So that means the beginning of Q3. So if AMD is going to launch Zen 5 in Q3, regardless of whether it's late July, sometime in August, or sometime in September, I think the closer they can align their product launch to Dawntrail, the better it is. They'll actually increase sales. Because the thing that we know about Dawntrail is the minimum and recommended PC specs are increasing. They're increasing the hardware requirements to run this game. And they have communicated this to their player base multiple times in their live letter, live streams that they do, their event coverage that they do at like PAX East, PAX West, etc. Like, they'll have a booth and they'll talk about, oh, this is stuff coming up. They'll announce it. So that the reason why they do this is because they don't want their player base, their subscribers, to get blindsided that all of a sudden the minimum GPU is higher than what they're currently using. You know what I mean? So that is a way that AMD could align. They could improve their number of units sold in the short term if they align their hardware launch with a big game launch. And this would be a perfect opportunity because Dawn Trail is a large game. I myself will be playing Dawn Trail a lot. Like a lot, a lot. We're talking like, probably that first month, I plan to drop every other game that I am currently like trying to complete in favor of this game. Basically, when Dawn Trail comes out, this is going to be the only game that I play for at least like 3 weeks or maybe a whole month or more. So, because that's typically how I handle MMOs. Like, I play them a ton right before the expansion and then during the expansion. And then, like, after the expansion kind of tapers off and I just go back to the way things were before. So, I myself will be playing a lot of Dawn Trail when it comes out. So I've already planned everything. So, and it lines up perfectly with AMD's, at least their CPU roadmap. I don't know about RDNA 4. So that brings us to RDNA 4. I feel like if AMD is capable of launching RDNA 4 at any time in Q3, I feel like the closer they could get it to Dawn Trail, and that means it'll be further away from the 5090's launch because we already know that the 5090 is launching in Q4, which is like October, November, December. So if AMD can get RDNA 4 and Zen 5 in Q3, I think that'll be better for them. I don't think that what I don't want to see happen is what we saw happen in 2022 and I guess even further back 2020, where everything, all these hyped up enthusiast grade computer parts get clumped together in the last 90 days of the year, and you have retailers like Best Buy and Micro Center and online retailers like Newegg having to deal with anti-scalping measures and anti-bot things that they have to do, like all this nonsense that they have to implement because of like scalpers, bots, all this type of stuff. Like the only reason why this happens is because all these products get crammed into the same release window. And I remember talking to various different people that work at Micro Center, asking them like, how do you guys like? Do you guys like when you got to do these big GPU launches or these big new hardware launches? And they're like, no. Who working in retail would enjoy having to deal with a mob of people outside the store trying to buy a graphics card? Like, nobody wants to deal with that. And the fact that these companies choose to launch everything in Q4 because of the holiday sales spree, whatever, like, it just makes it worse for the retailers because it's like, oh, we just did Zen 4, like last week. Now we've got 4090 this week. And then next week we have 13th gen from Intel. Oh, and then like 2 weeks after that we have RDNA 3 launching, the XTX. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's how stupid it is for the retailers to have to deal with the pressure of all these people lining up and all this stuff, and every 2 weeks, and you got to open early, you got to close late. It's not fun for them. So I feel like if these hardware companies space their products out further away from each other, it would be better. And if they're afraid, oh, well, if we don't sell in Q4, we're going to lose out on the holiday season. Well, the way you counteract that is you align your product with a big name game that your target demographic is going to probably play. So that way you can offset missing out on the holiday season. And the point is, like, who cares about the holiday season when it comes to the new hardware? Because the new hardware never goes on sale during the hardware season. It's always the previous generation stuff. So it's like, sell your old stuff during the holiday. Like Intel, they're stuck with all their 12th gen Alder Lake. Like, sell off all your Alder Lake stuff during the Black Friday thing or whatever, like Raptor Lake or what. Now, Intel has like so much Raptor Lake now. It's like, oh, good luck selling through all of that when you're going to try to launch Arrow Lake on top of it all. You know, like 15th gen is coming this year, guys. Like, but guess what? It's coming out during the holiday season, probably November. It's going to be stacked on top of like all these Black Friday deals of like, oh, 13700K is like 40% off or something, you know, like that's going to entice people to buy that. It's like, oh, they still have 12th gen. And then, oh no, oh, there's also the other Raptor Lake. There's the one with the 14 in the number. It's like, but they're the same exact thing. So now you've got like piles and piles of CPU generations all stacked on top of each other, and it's just a big mess. AMD, the fact that AMD is still selling Zen 3 in 2024 is kind of hilarious. But the only reason why AMD is still doing Zen 3, it's actually kind of a brilliant thing, and it goes to show kind of the how resourceful AMD is, being a much smaller company than Intel, because with Zen 3, AMD is able to offer a DDR4 platform for those that don't want to buy DDR5. The way they keep pace with the newer stuff is with X3D. That's why the 5800 X3D exists. That's why they did 5600 X3D Microsoft or Micro Center exclusive, and they did 5700 X3D. So they're doing these X3D things to keep their DDR4 platform moderately relevant in the current market. So it's kind of interesting how they've done that. And I might add that they are also able to cut costs on manufacturing, because by continuing to produce Zen 3 CPUs, they're leveraging a cheaper, older TSMC node to address that DDR4 market, where all the newer stuff is on DDR5. No, I think they're done. I'm pretty sure they're done with Zen 3 now, as of now, because you don't want to be a CPU vendor who has 3 generations of products existing in the market concurrently, because you want to sell your latest and greatest, but you also have to get rid of your older generation stock, because you don't want that sitting on shelves, because that's going to reduce the amount of orders you get to backfill from your newer things. So no, they're done with Zen 3 at this point. If the fact that they're launching Zen 5 this year, we know that they're done, because AMD will only carry like 2 generations of processors at any given time. So in this case, Zen 3 and Zen 4. Now that Zen 5 is coming out, it's going to be Zen 4 and Zen 5. So they're finally making, like, DDR4 is finally at its last legs. Like, if you wanted DDR4, you were either on Zen 3 or you were on, like, Intel 12, 13, 14 with a DDR4 motherboard. So, but you're kind of kneecapping those CPUs a little bit. But, that's just how it goes, using an older memory. I guess, yeah, but that's if that's a local market thing, then that doesn't really apply to what we're talking about here. But yeah, I really think that at the very least, Zen 5 should launch shortly or sometime in the same quarter when Dawn Trail is new, because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be upgrading their PCs around the time of this game's release. And I think World of Warcraft, this is later. I think this is... When is this coming out? Do we know? We don't actually know. But usually Blizzard's expansions are like, what, September? August, September, October? Somewhere in that part of the year. So that would be really good for Battlemage. Or maybe they do it the other way around. Maybe Intel should launch Battlemage with Dawn Trail alongside Zen 5, and then AMD launches RDNA 4 with this thing. I don't know. Like, however they do it, I feel like they need to align to these big games. So, but yeah, I'll be playing a ton of Dawn Trail. Like, a ton of Dawn Trail. I will easily probably put anywhere from 200 to 300 hours into Dawn Trail. And that will be like 3 times the number of hours that I've currently put into Final Fantasy VII. So I've currently put about 80 hours in Final Fantasy VII, and I literally have like 1 chapter left in Final Fantasy VII. So, and I see myself easily doing more than 100 hours in Dragon's Dogma. So Dawn Trail is easily going to be at least 100 hours from me. So yeah, this game is big. This game, and then the other thing too is Shadow of the Erd Tree. Elden Ring DLC comes out like a week before Dawn Trail. I'm tracking all of it. I'm looking at it here. So we do have a live stream scheduled for tomorrow, a gaming live stream tomorrow to cover Stellar Blade demo on PS5. But we've got Rising Tide, we got Final Fantasy 14 and Final Fantasy 16 crossover. That is starting next week, so I will probably start going back to Final Fantasy 14 soon. May. Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima on PC is literally the only game that I'm tracking for May. So I have nothing else in May. And then in June, we have Shadow of the Erd Tree, Dawn Trail, and that's it. And then after that, the only other game that I'm tracking is Trails Through Daybreak. The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak is July 5th. I have no other game listed. I have Black Myth Wukong is like somewhere. I don't know when that game's coming out, but it's like, I think it's like August. Other than that, nothing. So that means the rest of the year is going to be all about computer hardware. Like after Dawn Trail, I mean, unless World of Warcraft like entices me to somehow come back, I don't really see myself playing WoW. In all honesty, I'm probably not going to play WoW. But I will definitely play Dawn Trail. 100% guaranteed going to be playing Dawn Trail. So this is, in fact, I've already pre-ordered it. I've already pre-ordered the collector's edition for this thing. So we're pretty much committed at this point. So expect to see a lot of Final Fantasy 14 on this channel, like weekend streams, that sort of thing. We're gonna be testing lots of GPUs. I will test Intel Arc A770 with Dawn Trail, probably very soon with Threadripper. So expect to see that as we get closer to the release. But yeah, for now it's gonna be, in terms of games that I'm playing, it's gonna be Dragon's Dogma, Final Fantasy VII. And I might go back and play a little bit of Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. That's the one game that I wanted to go back and revisit. I still need to finish Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. That's a very good game. But yeah. So other than these two topics, was there any, what else did I want to talk about? I guess that's it. I guess that's all I had. Yeah. Battlemage, Zen 5. Oh, PS5 Pro. We don't need to talk about PS5 Pro. I guess, do you guys know how fast Battlemage is going to be? A770. So if Intel is going to get about a generational uplift worth of performance, Battlemage should be around RTX 4070. I've said this multiple times. It should be similar to an RTX 4070. Because an RTX 4070, and I'm not talking about a super, I'm talking about an RTX 4070. This is roughly 60 to 65% faster than the Intel Arc A770. So if Intel can pull off a miracle, and they can if they can get more than 70%. So, for example, this card, this is about 80% faster than an Intel Arc A770. So if Intel can somehow pull off a miracle and get 80% faster, which is actually kind of where they need to be considering what I'm going to compare them against, because I plan to compare Battlemage to a 3080 Ti, because this is the weakest, still relevant Nvidia GPU that I have. So you guys know my GPU collection. So we've got for Nvidia. For Nvidia, we have 4090, 4080 Super, 3090 Ti, and 3080 Ti. And then I have GTX 1080 and GTX 970. GTX 970 is so bad and so old, forget about it. GTX 1080 is already weaker than the A770, so that need not apply. So that means that the only other cards that we have here, let's switch over to paint because people seem to like the paint. So here, let's do this. My collection. So we got Battlemage, we got Intel Arc Battlemage versus. So we got versus. So here's what I plan to do. I got to select a proper GPU. So we have Nvidia RTX 4090. That's like Captain Ginyu, the strongest member. That's like the team captain. Then we have Nvidia RTX 4080S. This is Raccoon, like the second strongest member of the Ginyu force. Then we have Nvidia RTX 3090 Ti. That would be like Birder, the third most powerful member. Then Nvidia RTX 3080 Ti. That will be Jace. So basically, if Intel Arc Battlemage, now just humor me for a second. People are going to be like, what are you talking about? If we imagine that Battlemage is Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, and Nvidia has the Ginyu Force. So let me add one down here. GTX 1080. So let's just say we've got Ginyu, Raccoon, I forgot, is that how you spell his name? Raccoon, Birder, Jace, and how do you spell the last guy's name? Guldo or something? Okay, if these are the members of the Ginyu Force, basically these guys right here, if this is Vegeta, Guldo. Okay, I spelled it wrong. Anyway, you guys, okay, well, just ignore this little I here. So, this is the most appropriate fit because these guys are like the same height. So they're the same weight class. They're the same weight class. The others don't make any sense. Like these guys are too big. This guy's too powerful. This one might be interesting, but I feel like 3090 Ti is going to have too much VRAM, so it's like, no. So that's the only one that seems like it's going to be a proper comparison. So does that make sense? That's how I reason with what I'm going to choose hardware-wise. Now, for AMD, I am also going to compare it with an AMD card. The AMD card that I was planning on using would be the RX 6900 XT. This is the card that I plan to compare Battlemage with. So, knowing this, and knowing where I assume Battlemage will perform, which is basically an RTX 4070, I think it might lose to these opponents. Like, I feel like it's actually going to lose to both the 3080 Ti and the 6900 XT. But it'll be interesting to see if I'm proven wrong. If I'm proven wrong by Vegeta's tenacity. Maybe, like, because here's the reasoning. Intel Arc is like a Saiyan in the sense that it gets more powerful with every battle. So it has been losing so much. And because you guys will read the driver release notes and it's like, oh, in this one game, it's like 114% faster. Like, oh, and in that game, it's like 65% faster on this new driver. Like, those sort of things, you don't ever hear those sort of metrics, those gains on anything from Nvidia or even anything from AMD. Now, AMD, sometimes you'll hear like, oh, it's 14% faster in this one game or 16% faster. Like, they can get double-digit improvements, but not like 65% faster in one game. You know what I mean? So that's why I feel like the Arc GPU is kind of like Vegeta, because it's like tenacious. It's not going to give up. It's like getting stronger. People are making fun of it, putting it down. Like Linus and the boys are saying that its drivers are a mess. Or at launch, they were making fun of it, like not rendering Witcher 3 properly. Like Gerald's skin color was wrong or whatever on the Intel A770. So whatever the complaint may be, they doubled down and they're getting more powerful. So they're kind of, the benchmark is like 6900 XT and 3080 Ti. I feel like if Battlemage can match, or dare I say, exceed the power of a 6900 XT in actual rasterization performance, that will be very impressive if they can do that. At less power. Maybe the same amount of power as a 1600 XT, because that uses less power than a 3080 Ti. So that's what I think is going to happen. Or that's exactly what I'm going to compare it to. So we'll see. But I don't know. Depending on how it does, I may have to temper expectations, because I personally don't think that it's going to be as fast as these cards. Now, there are other people that have been members of the channel for a long time, and they're in the Discord channel, and they think that Intel needs to be this fast to even be on the radar. But I don't know if it's fair to ask this of them. I mean, what do you guys think? Like, do you guys think that Intel's Battlemage will be faster than a 6900 XT, or slower than a 6900 XT, or equal to a 6900 XT? Because 6900 XT is basically the same as a 3080 Ti in rasterization, and I'm basing this off of rasterization because that's the first metric. You want to see how it does in that. You have 4090 and 7950 X3D, but I find myself playing Ronin on PS5 more than Dragon's Dogma 2. Oh, you like Rise of the Ronin more? See, for me, it's been the opposite. I thought I was going to play a ton of Rise of the Ronin, but I ended up actually playing way more Dragon's Dogma for some reason. Maybe it's because I was testing it on so many different PCs. But it's like I test it, but I'm actually playing it. Like I'm also progressing through the game. So I don't know. Do you guys think Battlemage can match the RDNA 2 flagship? Or do you think it'll fall short? Because that's what I'm curious to know, what the actual viewers think. Because I already have my assumptions on where it will land. I've stated it before. I don't want to state it again. What's this? Uh-oh. Geforce RTX. This just in, RTX 4080 crashes during $1 million Counter-Strike 2 tournament despite being selected as the GPU of choice. Uh-oh. Well, that's embarrassing. I don't think Intel can match... Well, I didn't say 6950 XT. I said 6900 XT. 6950 XT is like 10% faster. So I don't know about that. That's basically assuming that it'll be faster. Marcelo thinks it's going to be the same as the 6800 XT. Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking too. Like here, where's the... Yeah. That's what I thought too. Oh, I'm not even showing you guys the right thing. Whoops. Still showing paint. Whoops. I was trying to show you guys this just in, by the way. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I agree. I honestly think what Marcelo's saying is the correct thing. Like, I personally said, you see, look at this, guys. Like, remember what I said? I said 4070. You know what's a little bit faster by like 2%? The 6800 XT. So I think that's not too much to ask of it. But it is acceptable. Yeah, it's kind of a mess. It depends on the time of day, though. It's not always 45. Like, it does fluctuate in the town. Because I'm playing it on the exact same specs. I'm playing it on 59, on the 7950X3D and the 4090. And it's kind of all over the place in the city. It depends on the time of day. It depends on if is the aux carton or the aux cart in the town on both sides. I've noticed it. I noticed the CPU utilization moves around a lot, or the CPU or the frame rate in this town fluctuates a lot depending on NPC density in the town. But yeah, meanwhile, 4080 crashes during $1 Million CS2 tournament despite being selected as the GPU of choice. So, technical malfunction leads to one PGL major tournament player being knocked out. Geforce RTX 4080 GPU driver crash cited as the main reason. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That's one of those wah wah. Oh, yeah, that's what I did. Turn off, okay, try it, there's something you can try. Go into Xbox. So there's two things you can do. You can either turn on, or open the game mode, the Microsoft Xbox game bar thing, and select this is not a game. Try that, and then restart the game. The other thing you can do, just turn off game mode globally in Windows and see what that does. That will make it run on both CCDs, and that will also favor the higher frequency cores if you do that. I personally have already tested that, and I do think I need to do actual benchmark runs, but my assumption is that if you say this is not a game, or you turn off game mode and then you run Dragon's Dogma 2, the game actually performs a little bit better than if you have it running in default with game mode and this is a game. Because I do think that it does like that frequency. And it still ends up using the Vcache CCD. You'll see what I mean. Test it out and you will see exactly what I mean. I have already done a live stream showcasing 4090 plus 7950X 3D. We tested it with game mode on, off, but I didn't record any data. So it was all subjective based off of me playing the game. With the Afterburner overlay up. So yeah, this is embarrassing. We are working now with Nvidia to identify and fix the issue. The PC was running on RTX 4080, which technically is well optimized. The game event supports Nvidia Reflex. See, I don't know about that Nvidia Reflex stuff. I feel like if something's gonna cause a game to crash, it's these extra things like Reflex. That could be what actually caused the crash. So for those wondering, when I stream games live, I usually don't turn on any of these weird extra things. I'll test DLSS, I'll test FSR, I'll test ray tracing, but when with these things like anti-lag, reflex, things where they start changing the overall GPU busy versus CPU busy, I don't know about those things. So I usually turn all that stuff off and never use any of that. So it's supposed to give gamers an edge in terms of latency feedback and response times. Okay, I mean, yeah, but the thing is, guys, CS2 players have existed and gotten by without reflex for literally decades. at this point. So I feel like if there's anything to blame, it's probably Nvidia Reflex, which probably caused the crash. But who know? I don't know. Who knows? The only thing is he had that on. He had this turned on, and the game crashed in a tournament. So we'll see. See what it ends up being. But yeah, like for CS2, you basically want. Actually, I don't know. Isn't this one of the games that the AMD GPU is actually faster in? Because I know Call of Duty, AMD, like Call of Duty, Frostbite. Is it Frostbite? No. What's the Call of Duty game engine? Frostbite is the Battlefield engine. Or is it backwards? Anyway, Call of Duty loves AMD Radeon graphics cards. Like, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but like AMD Radeon plus Counter-Strike is like the best way to play Counter-Strike. Unless you're overspending on the 4090. But like not counting 4090, like, have you guys seen how fast an XTX is in Counter-Strike? They all run the game on low latency, low settings. Oh. Yeah. They also tend to run the game in like that weird 4x3. They're playing the game in like the square monitor. Why is this a related story? Why is this a related story to some guy having his 4080 crash on him at a CS2 tournament? Like, Mark Zuckerberg meets Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang performing an iconic jersey swap. Wait, hold on a second, guys. Wait, is this for real? So, did somebody make it? Is this an AI image? Hold on, this is such a rare image. You know why this is a rare image? It has nothing to do with Zuckerberg. Jensen's not wearing a leather jacket. When was the last time you ever saw Jensen not in public, not wearing or out in public, not wearing a leather jacket? This is like a super rare photo because he's not wearing a leather jacket. He was even interviewed. In one of the interviews, someone asked him if the world supply of leather jackets was somehow constrained and you couldn't get a leather jacket, what would you do? And he said that it wouldn't be a problem for him because he's got lots of leather jackets in his closet to choose from. That is weird. That is weird. I don't know why this is news, but this is really interesting news. He's not wearing a jacket. He's not wearing the leather jacket. Yes, that's the jersey swap. That's the whole point of the article. They switched jackets. Mark Zuckerberg is wearing is Jensen's leather jacket, and Jensen's wearing whatever this coat. This looks like a winter coat for like out in the snow. Those vegan companies probably. What? That was so random. Anyway, I don't know why this was a related story to the Nvidia GPU crash. I don't know, man. We're grasping at straws. There's like nothing else for me to talk about on this stream. This has been a pretty lame stream. Not gonna lie. Like we talked about like future products that we can't even like get in our hands today. So it's all just kind of like hype and just sitting around waiting. So I guess the next thing we can talk about is like games. Again, games. Gaming. Okay. So it's like I guess let's get rid of all this stuff. Okay, so what are the games that you guys think? What are like the best games you've played so far this year? Let's list some of these games. So I don't want to include Pal World because that's early access. So you can't objectively grade Pal World because it's not actually released. So we're going to skip that one. So there was Grand Blue, Fantasy Relink, Tekken 8, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. Those are the January games. Then we had Persona 3 Reload, Let me go back in my list. Let me get my list. Yes, I keep a list. Oh. Skull and Bones. I'd never played it, but I mean, it came out in February. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. You have not been interested in a single game this year? Do you have a PS5? Because I feel like all the best games are on PS5 right now. At least games that have come out this year. Then there was... Okay, this is not new, but this is new on PC. Horizon Forbidden West PC Edition. I should specify because that game is technically 2 years old. I'll include it because most of the viewers are probably gaming on PC anyway. Then Dragon's Dogma 2. And then Rise of the Ronin. So, these are the games. These are the games that... these are the... Oh, you know what? I forgot one. I forgot a big one. How could I forget this one? This was in Helldivers. Helldivers 2. I completely forgot Helldivers 2. Yeah, that was February. In fact, that was like right after Persona 3. Okay, that one's a big one. The Suicide Squad game, how could you forget? When was that? I don't even know when that was. When was the Suicide Squad game? I don't know when that one came out. Anyway, these are the ones that I have been tracking. Have you seen the MSI Spatium M? Oh, it was February? So it was like around Helldivers 2, probably. Well, whatever. I mean, that's one that I didn't bother paying attention to. But these are like the big games. I have not seen that MSI cooler. So these are the games that like are contender for like different categories. I feel like Tekken 8 is basically just gonna walk away with best fighting game of the year due to a lack of competition, and it really probably would be the best fighting game of the year. The only way Tekken 8 could not win best fighting game of the year was if it launched last year and had to compete with Street Fighter 6. Like that's the only way, because I can see an argument for Street Fighter 6 actually being better. Like objectively, Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8, they got very similar like game aspects outside of the combat system itself. Like the lobby systems are similar. I feel like Street Fighter did a better job though. Like in my opinion, I feel like Street Fighter. Yeah, like Marcelo's saying Street Fighter got a way better single player mode. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I feel like overall, when I think of the two, outside of the combat, you can't grade them. You cannot compare Tekken and Street Fighter based off of the way that the fighting matches are played. Because one is a full 3D fighter, the other one is like a 2.5. It's like a 2D fighter. So you can't grade them on that because it's like now it's showing bias. You either prefer 3D or you prefer 2D fighters. You know, you can't objectively compare them. So you have to look at them in as the whole package. Like the single player, the soundtrack. I personally think Tekken 8 has a better soundtrack. I think the music in Tekken is like the best music in the entire fighting game genre, period. So in terms of sound and music, Tekken 8 like destroys Street Fighter. But Street Fighter has better single player. I think Street Fighter's lobby systems are also better. One thing that Tekken 8 does have though is the ability to save your replays and go back and watch the replay and let the system tell you like what you could have done in a certain situation, and you can view the fight from your viewpoint or from your opponent's viewpoint, so you can see what they could have done against you in a certain scenario. So it's a very, very cool thing that's like a really nice innovative thing that Tekken 8 has. Graphics in Tekken 8 is just hands down better though. Yes, but you can't really grade the game on. But see, that's the thing though. Just because a game is like 3D graphics, you can't say that that makes it better than a game that uses cell shaded graphics. You know what I mean? Like that's not really a fair comparison. That's not an objective comparison. That is a subjective comparison, and you cannot grade a video game, or you can't compare video games on subjective elements. So, in terms of the content, the overall package, if I had to choose, and guys, keep in mind, I am a big Tekken guy. Like I play Tekken way more than I will ever play Street Fighter 6. But objectively speaking, if I had to choose, like, if I had to be the judge and say which one's the better fighter, I'd have to give the win to Street Fighter 6. I would have to concede, even though I'm a Tekken fan. True and true. Like, I prefer Tekken gameplay, hands down, over Street Fighter 6 any day. But you gotta give credit where credit's due, and I feel like Street Fighter 6 is the better game from an objective standpoint in terms of the content that's offered. So, yeah, you're still playing Street Fighter 6. You finished story mode Tekken 8 and then never played. Yeah, I played Tekken 8. I climbed ladder when it was really hard. Like, I was going up against all the tryhards and all. Like, I had to face off against, like, Main Man and Rip and all those guys. And it was really, really tough to climb. I climbed to, like, Warrior on ranked, and then I kind of stopped because I started playing, like, Grom Blue and Infinite Wealth because I had to cover those games. But I've talked to some of my friends that still play Tekken 8, and they've all climbed way beyond where I stopped. And they told me that it's much, much easier to climb now because now you're facing off against all the scrubs and all the casuals and, you know, all the people that are new to Tekken. So if I wanted to go back and climb, it'd probably be much easier now because the first week, man, like that, you're going up against all the, like, extreme hardcore Tekken people. People kind of like me, but I don't really play Tekken competitive anymore. I haven't really played Tekken competitively ever since Tekken Tag 2, which was like more than a decade ago, just to give you guys an idea. Like, I played Tekken 5 DR competitively, and I tried to get into Tekken 6. I didn't like Tekken 6. Tekken Tag 2 really brought me back. And then Tekken 7 was okay, but I don't know. I just didn't really like Tekken 7. I mean, I thought Tekken 7 was better than 6, but it wasn't that good. 8 is definitely better than 7, though. But yeah. Yeah, so I still think, though, due to lack of competition, Tekken 8 is probably going to win Best Fighter of the Year. Like, what else is there? Like, what's going to compete with this for Best Fighter of the Year? Like, nothing. So it's basically a dead, like 100% guaranteed win right there. Dead giveaway. Okay, so Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, I really like this game. It's just, this game is very, very grindy. And, like, if you like grindy games like Monster Hunter and MMOs, you know, like Black Desert and Final Fantasy, you will probably love Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Like, if you like to play Korean MMOs or Korean games like Vindictus, like dungeon crawlers where you group up with people, or you could solo, but you could also group up with people, like, you will love Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. This is probably one of the best co-op capable RPGs of the year. I mean, the story is kind of whack unless you really, really know a lot about the Grand Blue universe. But it's not as crazy as the Like a Dragon series, but it's like a really, really good game. So this one, yeah, is really, really good. Infinite Wealth is also, this game, I am not a huge fan of the Yakuza series, or the Judgment series, or I guess now they're calling it Like a Dragon as the series, but this is probably the most fun I have had with a Like a Dragon / Yakuza / Judgment series franchise game in a long time. I played a little bit of Yakuza 4. I played Lost Judgment on PlayStation 5. And This game, I had more fun with Infinite Wealth than either of those two previous games. So yeah, this is good. This is a good game. It's an underrated game because I feel like this game is so good that technically speaking, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth can easily rival Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for best single player RPG of the year. But because the the audience for Infinite Wealth is smaller, and as a result of that, it has less hype, it has less marketing, it's more niche. Uh, it's unfortunate because I feel like Infinite Wealth is an excellent single player game. The story is good. The game is like 75% over the top, insane, crazy, and 25% serious, which is the complete opposite of Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is like 75% serious storytelling and plot and character interaction, and 25% goofy mini games, chocobo races, amusement parks, Disney World, theme park stuff. Like that's basically what Rebirth is filled up with. But Infinite Wealth also has a bunch of like weird random mini games. So like they're both similar, man. They're both really cool games. So it's unfortunate because I feel like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, this game, at the very least, this game should be a contender for best RPG of the year. I don't know about best game of the year. That's kind of a stretch. But definitely it is a contender for best RPG of 2024. Random GRE for that Newegg coupon. That's a very good deal. 474 for a 7900 GRE. That is a extremely good deal. That still doesn't really matter though, because it's like the ASRock Challenger. That's still what, triple fan? Is that triple fan? Oh, that's a double fan. It'll get very hot in the mini ITX. I don't know. I still think that's a good deal though. I don't. It doesn't really matter at that price point. That's still a good deal. Persona 3 Reload. This is an excellent game. The only thing is, this game is a remake. It's like a remaster of an old game. It's basically Persona 3. It's kind of like the Like a Dragon series. It's very niche. It has like a strong hardcore fan following. Not as big as the Final Fantasy crowd, but it's still pretty substantial. But because this game is actually not like a new game, it's not like Final Fantasy VII, which is a completely rebuilt, it's like everything is redone, like from the old PS1 classic. It's not even anything like the PS1 classic. So Persona 3 Reload, this is basically the same game from the PlayStation 2, except it has Persona 5 level graphics. And there's a little bit of tweaks, but it's still, for the most part, the same game. So I don't really expect to see Persona 3 Reload win anything. Like, maybe due to a lack of games, this will probably be on Best RPG, but I don't think it'll win. I really think that Infinite Wealth and Final Fantasy are... they're modern. They're both new. They're both using newer technology. Reload is basically Persona 3 with Persona 5 graphics engine. That's basically all it is. So, but if you like Persona 3 Reload, this is still an excellent game, so you should definitely play it. And if you've never played Persona 3, this is an excellent way, probably the best way to experience the game. So, the next up, Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2, from what I have heard, and I have seen a lot of people play this game, there are people in my Discord that also have played this game. This game is very, very fun. It's very good, especially when you play co-op. I feel like it's kind of boring after a while and repetitive if you're playing it solo, if you're playing single player. But if you're playing co-op, it's a whole different story. So I feel like Helldivers 2 has a lot of good replay value. because of the co-op aspect. And it's an interesting game. It's basically the easiest way I can describe Helldivers 2 is it is a third-person shooter. Think of it like Starship Troopers in a third-person shooter video game. That's the easiest way I can oversimplify it for anyone that has no idea what Helldivers 2 is all about. Next, Suicide Squad. I don't know anything about this. Marcelo mentioned it. I'm not going to play it. I don't have time. I ain't got time for that. So it's like, no. I guess it's... I don't have anything to say. Like, I don't know if it was good or bad. Received, like, what the score? 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, whatever. I don't know. I didn't really hear much about it. All right, Skull and Bones. This was that pirate ship game. It looked kind of fun and interesting, almost in a way that Helldivers 2 is interesting. But I don't know. I didn't really hear much about Skull and Bones. You heard Suicide Squad was terrible? Okay, see, I didn't know, so whatever. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I've covered this game extensively on the channel. You guys have seen me live stream it on the weekend a couple of times. It's good. All I can say is the game's good. It's a 9 out of 10. I'll tell you that. There are some things that prevent it from being a 10 out of 10. Mainly the fact that they don't give you... I feel like you don't really get convenient fast travel options until the late game, like very, very late game. I feel like they could have given you the ability to travel across the continents sooner, or at least more... Like, I wish they were a little bit more flexible in terms of some of the side content. But overall, like, the game is good. There's no bugs. It runs decently well on PS5 if you're playing it in graphics mode. It's a locked solid 30 FPS. This is the sort of game, though, that if the PS5 Pro was available today, this game could have been a 10 out of 10. I don't know. Like, the performance is acceptable on PS5, but if you play it in performance mode, it's so blurry, and it isn't even using FSR. It's using some ancient nearest neighbor upscaler technology from UE4, which is very, very bad. So I don't know why Square Enix did that. It's just terrible. So that's the reason why I don't play the game in performance mode. And some people, they refuse to play the game in the 30 FPS mode because they just don't let their eyes adjust. So they have to play it in the nasty looking, blurry performance mode. But this is definitely a game that I can't wait to see, like, how this game is improved by the PS5 Pro. Because the PS5 Pro will make this game run at 60 frames per second with the normal dynamic resolution, not this weird, like, blurry mess. So, but yeah, the game is extremely good. I feel like, as of right now, Rebirth and Helldivers 2 are probably the front runners for Game of the Year. Like, best RPG of the year is gonna be between Rebirth, Infinite Wealth, and maybe Persona 3 Reload. And for lack of competition, maybe Granblue Fantasy Relink. I feel like Granblue Fantasy Relink is probably not going to win any awards, or even be nominated for any awards, because it's kind of niche, but the gameplay is very addicting in the same way that Monster Hunter gameplay is addicting. But I just feel like because the game has a much smaller audience, it's smaller scale, the player base is smaller, it's just not going to gain enough visibility to get it on the radar. I mean, it might get nominated, but I don't think it's going to win anything. So, in terms of Game of the Year, though, right now, Helldivers 2 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and maybe Dragon's Dogma 2. So, let's talk about Dragon's Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma 2, so many people, prior to this game's release, so many people were saying that Dragon's Dogma 2 is Game of the Year 2024, no matter what. Like, they were so adamant that Dragon's Dogma 2 was going to wipe the floor with every other game that comes out this year for that title of Game of the Year. It was basically going to do what Baldur's Gate 3 did last year. So the thing is, it launched in a state where the average person playing the game on PC couldn't enjoy the game to the point where it was acceptable to play. It was so bad that let's forget about the microtransactions. First of all, let's address the microtransactions, because the microtransactions thing, the people complaining about microtransactions in Dragon's Dogma 2, they need to be quiet. I don't have any other thing to say to these guys. Like, this is the dumbest argument I've heard, because the microtransactions are completely optional. Secondly, the game is a single player game, so there's nothing that you can get from the microtransactions that will benefit you over other players, because it is a single player game. The only online aspect is the pawn system, which is really just to help you enjoy the game using other characters that other players created. So the microtransaction thing is kind of pointless. Save files are a microtransaction needed to do a different playthrough of the game. What? The microtransaction? No, the microtransactions don't buy you a new playthrough, though. Okay. The microtransaction thing, I don't have a problem with that, because that's completely optional. And as long as you play the game, like if you're going to put 100 hours into this game, the microtransactions mean nothing. Because by the time you've put 100 hours in the game, you'll have farmed up so much RC and so much gold that they don't mean anything. Like the microtransactions are pointless. They're literally pointless in this game. Like, they don't do anything at all. Like, they don't get you any sort of advantage over other players. So it's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. So that's the microtransaction. Now, here's the thing that hurts this game. Number one, the biggest thing that hurts Dragon's Dogma 2 is the fact that you cannot create a new game if you want to start over on a full new playthrough. Best example I can give you: you create your character and you start the new game. Then, shortly into the game, you realize you don't like the look of your character. Now, there's a few options. They allow you to edit your character using a rare in-game item that's a one-time use. So it's like you use that item, you can edit your character, you can redo your character however much you want, good to go. But if you then want to do it again, you got to buy that item from some shop owner, and then that item is like, I think it's like some amount of RC points, and the RC points, you get those very slowly while playing the game. Otherwise, you can spend real money to get the RC currency, which is kind of like the riot points in League of Legends. I mean, that's the best example I can give you guys, like the paid currency. So that kind of funnels back into the microtransactions. But the thing is, you get it within the game for free for like 2 attempts. Now, so they kind of mitigate that criticism. However, this wouldn't be a problem if you could create a new game and just start over and forget about your failed character that you created. See, the fact that they don't let you create a new character, and they don't let you delete your save within the game, meaning you still can delete your save, but you have to like go into Windows, and it's weird. You got to find the file directory where it exists, and you delete it. Then you have to like desync from Steam Cloud, because Steam Cloud also saves it. So it's a kind of like a huge hassle to just start a new game. So that's like the biggest problem that I see with Dragon's Dogma 2. The second issue is the performance in the cities. But it's not just the cities, but it's mostly in the cities. And it's unfortunate because it's kind of the limitation of using RE Engine and scaling the NPC count so high. So it clearly shows that RE Engine was not designed to scale to the level of what an MMO is capable of being. So Capcom said that they're going to try to fix it in the next several weeks to months. But you know that could just be PR statements. That remains to be seen, like how much they can actually do in terms of improvements. But that being said, I still think that Dragon's Dogma 2 is a contender for Game of the Year. Like, despite the issues, the game is so good. The gameplay is so addicting. The story is pretty good. It's very weird, and it gets weirder the more you play it. But if you like that kind of stuff, all the more power to you. I think Dragon's Dogma 2 is being... I feel like it's being criticized a little bit unfairly, especially the microtransactions. I think that's not a valid criticism. And the performance is also kind of... It's like, yeah, it's bad in the city, but if you're outside, and most of the time, you're going to be outside questing in the field anyway, because of the nature of the game, and most of the time, it's not a problem. So, it's, you know, it is what it is. It runs, on the consoles, it runs anywhere from like 25 FPS to like upper 30s, depending on the area. So it's basically like how a Zen 2 CPU would handle the game. So, not the best, but I feel like the game is still good enough as it, despite the issues, Dragon's Dogma 2 is still so good that it deserves a spot on the list for Game of the Year. Because what else is there, guys? Like Helldivers 2, 4 months from now, Helldivers 2 is probably going to have only like 10,000 people playing it. You know what I mean? Like Helldivers 2 is going to fall down in terms of popularity. It's very popular now, and it's a really good game, but I feel like personally from this current list, if I had to choose candidates for Game of the Year, Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Helldivers 2, those three. Maybe Infinite Wealth. But that's a stretch because I know that's a very niche game that doesn't really... Like, not everybody likes the Yakuza series. But yeah, in terms of like... yeah, I can see this one being on the list. I don't see it winning. But there's only like so few choices. You know what I mean? Like Dragon's Dogma, this... Helldivers, like, that's basically it. Like, if I had to pick a fourth game, Infinite Wealth is better than, like, all these other ones. Like, that's all there is to it. This won't even be included because this is not even, like, a new game. So that doesn't even count. This won't win anything because this is also just it's a reskin of a really old game. So... The new Indiana Jones game could be... I don't know. There's no release date. There's no info. No. If the Indiana Jones game... depending on how that game plays, if it ends up being like Avatar, it's not going to win any awards. Avatar could get nominated for some categories, but I don't think Avatar's going to win any like big categories. Like Avatar's not going to be Game of the Year. Avatar's not going to be like a best shooter. It's... You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what category. Wukong is not going to win anything. From what I've seen, like, Rise of the Ronin is better than Wukong. But I could be surprised. By that game. So that leaves with Rise of the Ronin. Rise of the Ronin is a very good game that is underrated. It's flying under the radar. Like, this game, guys, is so fun. But I feel like I have mixed feelings about Rise of the Ronin. Rise of the Ronin is good, but for some reason, I feel like Team Ninja's previous games were better. I don't know. Maybe I just need to play more of it. The pacing of this game is much slower than the Team Ninja's previous games. So let's talk about Rise of the Ronin. Actually, I'm going to put some more stuff on here. Stellar Blade, Wukong, or... Black Myth, Wukong, FF14, Dawn Trail, WoW. What was the World of Warcraft expansion? I don't care. Expansion. Just say it that. Okay, so let's... these are some other games so that I'm tracking. The other one would be like The Legend of Heroes, Trails Through Break, I think, is the English translation. Kuro no Kiseki. Anyway, that's yeah, we'll just go with that. So these are some other games that I just kind of threw on here. Is that the only? Oh, Ghost of Tsushima PC also. Run better and look way better than Dragon's Dogma 2. Okay, first of all, guys, Wukong is not the same sort of game. So let me clear some confusion about Wukong. Wukong is similar to Rise of the Ronin and Sekiro in terms of gameplay. You're talking about a single player, linear, non-open world. Now, they say it's kind of open world, but it's not really open world. Like, Rise of the Ronin is way more open world than Wukong. Wukong is, like, level-based. So I'm not even going to include these. Wukong is similar to Nioh. That is the game that Wukong is similar to in terms of the structure of the game. It's mission-based, meaning it's instance-based, specific fixed maps, not a giant world that loads everything in like Dragon's Dogma. So in terms of how it runs, it should be much, much easier on a CPU. Rarely should this game ever be CPU limited because it is not an open world game. So now, clearing that up, let's talk about Rise of the Ronin, because Rise of the Ronin is a game that I was very, very hyped to play. And I feel like I would have put probably 30, 40 hours in Rise of the Ronin by now if it wasn't for Dragon's Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma, for some reason, has stolen my attention span away from Rise of the Ronin, because I really, really wanted to play Rise of the Ronin. But here's my thing about Rise of the Ronin. Rise of the Ronin is 2024. What was last year from Team Ninja? These are Team Ninja. This is Koei, Tecmo. Yeah, Tecmo. Team Ninja is the developer. Koei Tecmo is the parent company. Rise of the Ronin is published by Sony. This is the publisher. So that is the reason why it is a PlayStation 5 exclusive. So what was the previous game? Wulong. Fallen Dynasty. You guys saw me play that last year. That was 2023. That was published by Koei Tecmo, not Sony. That is the reason why not Wulong. I spelled it wrong. Wolong, not Wulong. Wolong. Is it Wolong? Yeah, Wolong, not Wulong. Wolong Fallen Dynasty. This is a 2023 game published by Koei Tecmo. That is why this game launched multi-platform day one. Whereas Rise of the Ronin, because it's published by Sony, it is a PlayStation 5 exclusive, similar to Bloodborne and Spider-Man and those type of games. Now, because it's done by Koei Tecmo, I am sure next year Rise of the Ronin is coming to PC. But Koei Tecmo does these type of games almost annually at this point, because 2022 was Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. This was a reimagining, retelling of Final Fantasy 1. This was their 2022 game. This is the game that competed against Elden Ring. But because Elden Ring overshadowed everything around it like a giant nuclear bomb, everyone forgot about Final Fantasy Origin, just like they forgot about Horizon Forbidden West. Because Horizon Forbidden West launched, followed by Elden Ring, so Elden Ring eclipsed Horizon. Then Stranger of Paradise launched, but it was too small, so it immediately got eclipsed by Elden Ring. So they do these type of games a lot. And then before that was my favorite Team Ninja Koei Tecmo game in recent memory, Nioh 2. I guess Nioh is the full is the thing, but Neo 2 on PC. This was their 2021 game. So these guys are like every single year at the same time of the year, around March of every year, they crank out these action games. So what was 2020? Neo 2 on PS4 was the 2021. So prior to that, they didn't do anything. So Neo 1 was... the original Neo was PS4 in 2017. So somewhere in here was Neo 1 on PC. I forget what year. I forget. Someone will have to check. Probably 2019 or 18 or somewhere. I don't know. I'm just going to do this. Somewhere in there. So it's like almost every year, Team Ninja cranks out these action games, these Souls-like games, even though they've been doing these type of games longer than From Software, because the Ninja Gaiden series was way older. But my favorite game that they've done is this one, Neo 2. Like, Neo 2, I've got like a lot of hours in that game. I enjoyed this more than all of these other games. Like, I enjoyed it more than Neo 1. I enjoyed it more than Stranger of Paradise. Although I really did like Stranger of Paradise, at least on the normal difficulty level. Wolong, I don't know, that game was okay. So it remains to be seen. And my current feeling playing Rise of the Ronin is that it gives me that same sort of feel like when I was playing Wolong last year. Like, it's fun, but it's not like Neo 2 levels of fun, if that makes sense. Like, I personally think Neo 2 is more fun. And maybe it's because Neo 2 has, like, supernatural elements. Like, you fight humans, you fight undead, you fight yokai, you fight all kinds of, like, demon things. You fight all kinds of weird stuff in Neo that you don't fight in Rise of the Ronin. Rise of the Ronin, because it is supposed to be more based in reality, it's supposed to be historical fiction with loosely, like, they use realistic people from history. They use real people from history, like actual historical figures in the story. So there's no yokai, there's no ghosts, there's no demons, there's none of this weird supernatural stuff. So it's definitely more grounded in reality. And I feel like, unfortunately, that just makes the game feel more, I don't know how to say this, like, bland? I don't know. Like, it's still a good game. It's just, compared to their previous works, it's not as interesting. Like, it's a good game. It's a pretty good story. It's just not, like, I'm just so used to the crazy over-the-top, like, boss monsters and stuff that you fight in Neo and Wolong, and even in the Final Fantasy game. You fight all kinds of the classic Final Fantasy enemies in that game. So it's just, I don't know. And Final Fantasy had a job system, which was really cool. So, I don't know. It's interesting. You gave up Neo 2 since you couldn't beat the Minotaur at the very start. You beat all From Software games. Neo 1 and 2 just don't click with me. Yeah, the control scheme's different from the From Software games, for one thing. Yeah, I do think that the Team Ninja games are actually harder than the From Software games. Like, sometimes... See, here's the thing. Like, From Software's games are fair. Like, the difficulty in their games feels fair. The difficulty in the Team Ninja games is borderline broken unfair in a lot of cases. Like, Wolong Fallen Dynasty, there was a lot of boss fights where you literally die in 2 hits if you fail to parry the boss. So, and that can be very off-putting for a lot of people. So these games are definitely not for everyone. So so anyone who is watching this and you know the reputation of Dark Souls and Elden Ring and those sort of games, and you know how hard those games are considered, these games that I'm talking about here, like all of these games, These games are like those games on steroids. So, like, if you think Elden Ring is hard, don't ever play any of these games that I just circled, because these games are even harder than Elden Ring. Like, legit way harder. The only exception is probably Rise of the Ronin and Stranger of Paradise, because these two games actually have difficulty levels. You can actually lower the difficulty level to easy mode in those two games. And the reason why you can do that in those two games is because Sony published Rise of the Ronin and wanted it to be more accessible to a wider audience. Likewise, Square Enix contracted, they're the publisher of the Stranger of Paradise game because Final Fantasy is their franchise. So they mandated that Team Ninja have an easy mode in this game. So these are the two exceptions. These games actually have an easy mode. The other games don't. The other games are intended to be played hardcore. Like the Nioh and Nioh 2 and Wolong Fallen Dynasty, those are like hardcore games. So if you don't like Dark Souls, never play those games because you will hate those games. You're going to want to refund those on Steam probably within the first 10 minutes. So, yeah. But I think, let me see. Like, I played Nioh. I probably put like 80 to 100 hours in Nioh 2 on PlayStation 4 the first year it came out. Then I bought it a second time on PC, replayed the entire thing on PC, and I think, let me find my where's my Steam thing here? Like, how many hours did I put into this game? Nioh 2. I have 185 hours in the PC version of Nioh 2. So that plus the almost 100 hours on PlayStation. And I did also play the PS4 one on the PS5, which plays basically the same as the PC version. So I probably have like, 300-ish hours in the Nioh 2 game. Like overall, I put like 300 hours into this one game. So across both platforms. So that shows you guys how much I like this franchise. If I can drop like 300 hours into a game. So that's a lot. Especially like a really difficult game. So Wolong is an interesting one. Let me see. Wolong, how many hours did I put into that? Wolong, only 23 hours. I only put 23 hours into Wolong. So that shows you guys how I didn't really care for that game. And then Stranger... Final Fantasy, I can't find that one because that's on Epic Games. I have to go launch Epic Games Store. Because I bought that game off of Epic Games instead of Steam. It came to Steam, like, way later. Like, and I wasn't going to wait around. So, yeah, that one I don't know. But that one I think I probably have, like, 50 hours or something. That game I actually beat. I beat Stranger Paradise. Have you ever played any roguelike? Where if you die, you basically lose everything? I mean, isn't that like the Dark Souls game? Oh, you mean like you lose everything? No, not really. Because I feel like when you do that, then you feel like you're not making any progress. So those games just don't really click with me. At least if you die in these games, you still retain your gear and you retain like your gold, the currency. You lose the currency that you use to level up. You have to go and regain that. But it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. So, but yeah, I want to play more Rise of the Ronin. It's just Dragon's Dogma 2, man. Dragon's Dogma 2 is just so good. Like, Dragon's Dogma 2 is so good. I just can't stop playing that game. So, Game of the Year contender for sure. That game... This game, And a game that I still have to play, but I acknowledge it's good. See, I try to be as objective as possible. So even though I have not played Helldivers 2, I recognize its popularity and I recognize that it is a good game. I know people that have it and I've seen people play it like in person, sitting in front of me playing the game. So I have seen the game firsthand. I myself have not played it, but I know that it's a good game. So in terms of Game of the Year contenders, these are the three that I think will be in that list so far. I would include Infinite Wealth, but because it's still, like, we're literally still technically at the very end of Q1, I'm not going to fill up the list so early. But I feel like there's not a whole lot of other games slated for the rest of the year that would be surprising. So, like, Black Myth Wukong, like, people keep mentioning this game. I don't think that game is going to be that good, guys. Like, I'm just going to be honest with you. I have heard, like, mixed things about this game. And the thing is, I follow a lot of channels and review outlets that are really hardcore into, like, Dark Souls and From Software games. And from what I hear, I'm hearing a lot of mixed things about Black Myth Wukong, and it's not good. It's not good. So, I'm not going to, like, set the wrong expectation for myself for that game. I'm just going to let it play out and see how it goes. One game that we will be looking at very soon, though, because this game comes out next month, is Stellar Blade. I will be playing Stellar Blade. In fact, the demo for Stellar Blade will be available for download within the next 12 hours. So we are 12 hours away from Stellar Blade demo being available. And I will be covering this game because this game, it's not a Game of the Year contender though, but Stellar Blade is 2024's Lies of P. There, I said it. I have now cleared up any sort of confusion as to what this game is going to be. It's going to be a challenging action game that's going to be challenging in the same way Lies of P is. Now, I have to play the demo to get the full picture, but I think Stellar Blade is going to not be as hard as Lies of P. It's going to be somewhere between Lies of P and Nier Automata in terms of difficulty. Nier Automata was an easy game. Like, Nier Automata is an easy game. Lies of P is a hard game. Like, one game is easy, one game is hard. Stellar Blade is like a fusion of those two games. That's kind of what I expect going into this game. So I'm actually more hyped for Stellar Blade than Black Myth Wukong, because I've heard a lot of, like, weird things about Wukong. I'm not really going to play into that too much, but I think Wukong, people had the wrong idea. People thought it was going to be open world, like Dragon's Dogma. It's not open world. It's like fixed missions like Neo. So it's not even as open as Rise of the Ronin. So I don't know. I'm hoping that it's still going to be good, but Stellar Blade looks way more promising. From anyone who likes action games like Devil May Cry, Ninja Gaiden, Bayonetta, Stellar Blade is going to be, like, right up there on the list, because that game is going to be action packed. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. So I will be playing that game next month. Stellar Blade will be covered on stream on this channel at release. It will also be covered on stream for the demo tomorrow. So if you guys want to check out Stellar Blade and my first impression of the game from the demo, you're probably going to want to check out the channel because I will be live tomorrow streaming Stellar Blade. Dragon's Dogma's RT is no different from any of the Resident Evil games. Didn't Jedi Survivor get nominated or something last year? Optimization isn't really a factor for nomination. Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, yeah. That's why Dragon's Dogma 2 is still a Game of the Year contender, as far as I'm concerned. It's still just too good. Like it's just way too good to consider it like not good for a Game of the Year. Like the demo is kind of short. You're just gonna stream it and be done. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, I could probably play like Dragon's Dogma 2 after or something. Can you join VC? Maybe. I guess. Yeah, I can for a short while. I'll have to take a break first before I join, but yeah. I mean, I think that's going to be it for this episode. I didn't really have anything to talk about. So it's going to be gaming first half of the year, hardware second half of the year. It's looking more and more like that's going to be the reality. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you're new to the channel and you like this sort of discussion on kind of a hybrid approach to gaming and technology, especially if you're someone who's in PC gaming and building PCs and as a hobby, you should probably subscribe to the channel because you're probably going to learn something here. At the very least, we have an active, very active Discord. From what I've been told, this Discord has, my Discord channel for the YouTube channel has a lot of active people that are helpful for like tech help, overclocking advice, that kind of stuff. So you're into any of that, get subscribed to the channel. I occasionally will do kind of sort of guide videos on overclocking. We've done that a few times. I am going to be doing a lot of videos later on motherboards because I feel like there's a lack of content on motherboards, specifically those things, and maybe more DDR5 content in the near future. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned to the channel. If you like the gaming stuff that I talk about, get subscribed for that too. There's a lot of gameplay. We tend to focus on benchmarking in real time. I feel like that gives viewers a more, like a bigger picture other than looking at a bar chart where someone did a fixed benchmark run in the same spot. Because I feel like if you're playing, especially an open world game, the results that you see are going to vary dramatically depending on where you are, what time of day in the game world, how many NPCs, etc., that sort of thing, which is definitely the case with Dragon's Dogma. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will catch you guys next time. Take care.